Okay.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's Talking Saul. I'm here with Dancing Sean. We're going to be reviewing episodes 10, 11, and 12 of season 6. I haven't been on for the last couple of weeks to do this because I've been moving. But we're going to be trying to catch up by hitting 3 episodes this week. Sean?
So usually it takes us about 2 hours to cover one episode. So this is going to be a 6-hour stream. No.
Our goal is 3 hours. Uh,
Yeah.
and we'll see how it goes. I was having some technical issues. It looks like if you see something prior to this, ignore that. We talked for 10 minutes and nothing was going on. My audio was messed up. So we're just gonna restart over.
We spent most of that 10 minutes talking about Game of Thrones anyways.
Yeah. But basically, we were highlighting how well the show is made. How genius, basically, the writers, the directors, everyone on set, cast, and all that are doing to make just not the season, but the series, Better Call Saul, probably one of the best series of all times.
Yeah, I've started to decide. I think it might be the best show of all time. You might there's whenever you have a discussion like this, I think you've got to distinguish between your favorite versus the best,
Mm-hmm.
or even like the most recommendable. Like I don't know. Let's just say that uh I don't know, Sopranos. Let's just say that Sopranos is the best show of all time. I'm still not gonna sit down and watch that with my little sister. Does that make sense? It's
Mm-hmm.
still like, and so the show that might be best for me to sit down and watch with my little sister isn't the same thing as the best show ever made or my favorite show. There's like different standards. But when you want to talk about the production quality, the writing, the editing, the performances, just the filmmaking aspects that go into it, maybe not accounting for the audience or some people don't like violence or something like that, but just like how well made of a show it is, I think it's the best of all time. I
Yep.
really do.
Yeah. No, I completely agree.
I think it
Um,
also might be my favorite of all time. It's competing with The Office. I know a lot of people maybe aren't fans of The Office, but a lot of people love it.
yeah.
If I had to pick a favorite, I think I'd pick The Office. But I think my second favorite is Better Call Saul, and I think the best made of all time is Better Call Saul.
Yeah. No, I'm up there with you. The Office is a fantastic show. I remember being hesitant at first. You recommended it to me, and I was like, yeah,
It can
it's
be kind
okay.
of cringy.
Yeah.
Some people don't like that style, but I think once
But
you,
it grows on you for one,
yeah,
and two,
yeah,
it gets better. They dive deeper
yeah,
into the characters, and it's like
yeah,
it's a character driven show, and it's a comedy, but it's also a drama.
yeah.
But um,
We're gonna end up talking about The Office, just like we talked about Game of
I was
Thrones
thinking
before.
that. But our goal is
I think we went on that tangent before, just because in my introduction I was saying I'm Dancing Sean. I got started podcasting with History of Westeros for Game of Thrones, and right when Better Call Saul ends, House of the Dragon is gonna start up, and so I'll be
yes,
doing that too. And it's somehow how I got into social media, as being part of the communities online that watch these great shows that are out these days. So I'm Dancing Sean on Twitter and on YouTube, and I just got onto Reddit. And anyway, there's lots of outlets out there for people to discuss and talk and uh, share appreciation and insight into these shows. And so I welcome everyone to jump into that, including our podcast here.
yes. So we're gonna dive into episode 10, which is called Nippy. So in
Ippy.
general, Nippy.
I thought you said ippy.
Oh
It
yeah.
should be nippy. Yeah.
um, in general, from episodes 1 through 9, they've been focusing on the prequel before Breaking Bad, Jimmy when he's younger, and how he became Saul. But in these, 10, 11, and 12, and we knew this was going to happen. They're going to be focusing on Gene, or at least we thought they're going to be focusing on scenes from Breaking Bad, maybe like a different lens to Gene's story and what's been going on with Saul in the future, or technically present. I guess it depends on how you look at it.
You know, I want to say something here, Flint, and I'm kind of torn in how to say this because
Yeah,
I realize someone listening to us
yeah,
who's not familiar with the show might be really confused because we keep talking about Jimmy and Gene and Saul,
that is a good
and it's
point.
almost like a point of discussion even for people who watch the show. But if you're not watching the show, that's the same character. He takes on these different personas through the course of his life, and but also if you're not familiar with the show, we're gonna spoil a lot here. We're
Oh,
diving
absolutely.
into the finale of the show, so I think the show is great enough that even if you know all the final plot points, it would still be one of the best shows, full of surprises and insight and entertainment throughout the whole thing, even if you know how it ends. But you really might be spoiling some of the potential guesswork at the direction they're going, or climaxes that they're building up to. We're
Mhm.
gonna get deep into. So be wary if you're worried about spoilers. We're gonna dive deep into this final season.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, it is interesting to think about the idea that it was speculation a lot of people had. We talked a lot about the idea
Yeah.
that through the course of the show, uh, we've been focusing on this prequel, this flashback to what was going on before Breaking Bad,
Mhm.
mostly centered around this character Saul Goodman slash Jimmy McGill slash well, not slash Gene yet, because that's a flash forward. That's the thing that even though it's mostly been there, we've gotten these little snippets of what happens to Saul after things fall apart in Breaking Bad. He's kind of whisked away to a new identity
Yeah.
um,
He's in
as
Nebraska,
Gene.
right?
Yeah, in Nebraska, just working at a Cinnabon, just trying to lay low.
If you don't know,
And
um,
mhm,
the show is taken place in Albuquerque, New Mexico. So he
most
is,
of the show, yeah,
yeah,
that's the
yeah.
main
At least
setting.
Breaking
Yeah.
Bad is, and obviously Better Call Saul. So he is definitely away.
Yeah.
Anyways, continue. Sorry.
And we've gotten little snippets of that, of what's going on in Gene, this new persona he's taken on, quote unquote, in the future. Like, uh, it, but there's been a
Oh wait, still there? Oh no! Oh, a second. Losing Sean for a second. Waiting for Sean. Waiting for Sean. What the heck happened? Hello. Hold on one sec. Oh, your power. All right. So Sean's power went out, so this may be a moment. Well, while he's trying to come back to the reality of the screen. Um, so Gene's series have, like, his segments have been in black and white. Everything has been in color, and color is a very important thing in this show. But since Gene's segment, or the future, um, yes, he's just telling me now. Hopefully, he'll come back quickly. I'm just texting it back. Um, yeah, since he's in the future, and everything's in black and white, we really don't know, like, if you're wearing a certain color, it can be an indication of exactly what's going on through their mind, or what the writers are trying to portray. Um, so it is interesting to see how they use, well, the black and white in this context. Um, Hold on one second. I'm sorry. I'm just seeing how this is. Oh no! All right, just looking at technical things real fast. No, where did I go? Let's see if we can wait for a moment for Sean to come back. Sean obviously is in a different state than me, uh, so I'm not having this issue. Thank goodness. But power goes off. That's terrible because, well, everything just goes to shit. Um. Well, since we're on a break for a second, waiting for Sean to come back, um, I've been moving, so I haven't been on line lately. And the goal is to get back to streaming like normal. It's still a little hazy because I have a lot of stuff that's all over the place. Some of my equipment doesn't properly work. Like, I have lights, and my lights power, the power cord, I actually don't know where they are. Um, things like that. When you're like in a move state, it's a little tricky to plan basically you should be planning how you pack certain things that are important to you, because if you don't, you're going to be in my state where I don't know where certain things are, and it's super annoying, and it's super inconvenient for when you are trying to stream. But I was playing. I just finished Chrono Trigger the last time I streamed. That was one of the last games I played. It was nice that I finished it. But I've been playing Crosscodes, which is a good game. I think I'm like 1/6 of the way through that game, so I'll be continuing that. I've been playing streams with Foreign Hero. We've been doing Elden Ring. We finished that, and we're diving into other games like Genshin Impact or Warframe. So we did a Warframe video with Chroma. What was another game? Oh yeah, Fairy Tail. I think there's like 8 episodes, and I'm on episode 6. I have a couple more episodes. Episodes are like our chapters, I guess, in that game that I need to go through. I thought I was about to beat it, and then a whole nother segment opened up. But on top of that, we will finish the Better Call Saul episode. They're going to air episode 13 next week, and I'm hoping or is the plan to finish it. His power looked like it is on, so he's about to be back soon. So things that I like about Better Call Saul. I guess we'll dive. This is like a tangent until Sean gets here, but one of my favorite characters is Mike. I freaking love Mike. I in general love how they put interesting. I don't want to say quirks, but they make a lot of these characters very interesting, like Gus or Mike or Nacho. Or, well, of course, Saul. I actually didn't like Saul in Breaking Bad that much. I thought, well, he's supposed to be like a sleaze bag or something like that. But like, what they did with him in Better Call Saul is incredible, because obviously, I winded up caring for him a lot. And I loved how they focused a lot on Mike, because he was this character who, I guess, is pragmatic. He doesn't like bullshit. He just like gets straight to the point, but he also is very thorough in how he does his job. And how he just carries himself, how the actor carries Mike. It's fantastic. Spoiler warning, there's like a lot of characters in Breaking Bad that so in Better Call Saul, if a character doesn't feel like they ended, it's because they're in Breaking Bad. So like, for example, Gus and Mike, their story doesn't exactly end in Better Call Saul. Like you get to know more of their history, but they're a huge part of Breaking Bad. And like I said, spoiler warning, Gus and Mike don't make it to the end. They get killed off. And it is just interesting that people that we know their destination, still you care for them, or you care for them even more if you make characters that are like their character great. Sorry, let me okay, I'm just waiting for Sean. But yeah, that's just one thing that I always thought was really interesting about the show. Just how they dealt with these characters. And there was new characters like, Howard and Nacho that were new to the universe. And like, I'm a huge fan of Howard. I think that character is a very well done character, and he starts off like kind of like, I guess you could say, a villain. Not really a villain, but like an antagonist to Saul. And Saul's just not really a great person if you think about it. And Howard's just trying to do the right thing. But since we see it through the lens of Saul or Jimmy, you may have a skewed look on how Howard really is. And I find that fascinating that they even like could write stuff like that and make you question even a character that is good, that tries to do the right thing. And you may think that he's just not so great of a person, or he's out to get Saul or something like that. I don't know. It's interesting and fascinating to me. Let me check on the status of. So he says he's booting up his computer. So I'm just waiting for him to get back into Discord. I'm just rambling on until Sean gets back. Because we're gonna. He said the goal is to dive into Nippy. I guess I could at least talk about like a little bit of the intro. Get like an idea of what's going on. So in Nippy, like I said, everything is in black and white. This is through Gene's lens, through Jimmy, who is portrayed as Gene in the future. You get so Gene has been working in a place called Cinnabon. It's one of the cinnamon places that are linked in the mall. So he's his character seems like he's just dead, like he's lifeless, which is why I think part of the reason why they did black and white, because it's so like everything about him. He's such a colorful character. To take that away from him, that I feel like that like defines exactly what Gene is feeling, and that moment, or Saul or Jimmy is feeling in the future, as he just doesn't feel like he is motivated to do anything. He may be scared. He's depressed, as Sean put it. He thinks that when he went from Better Call Saul and got divorced to Kimmy, and just Howard died and his brother died, he's been stuffing a lot of things, and the only way for him to compensate for all this, to live with himself, was to basically become like this person he's not, like Saul, or maybe to dive into that person he was originally, slipping Jimmy. And he's been like so fast paced going through, like Breaking Bad. Like he always has something going on. He's always basically ignoring his feelings of what has happened to him in the past. And now when he's in Gene mode, when he's in the future, he doesn't have all this stuff anymore. He has a lot of time to think, and he's just drained from all the stuff that's happened to him. It's like weighed on him, I feel. And he's just become the sad man that, it's hard to recognize who Jimmy is, when he's portraying this Gene character, because he's just a lifeless person. Okay. Update on him. I'm on my browser finally. Okay, so he should be coming in any moment now. What's going on? Someone was on talking about spoilers. Yes, spoilers. All right. So yeah. So these next three episodes, episode 10, 11, and 12, they've been focusing on who Gene is and where his mindset is, and hopefully he, like throughout the course of these episodes, he's becoming more like Slipping Jimmy, Jesus. and you get to meet like a couple of other characters. So there is a, hopefully Sean comes in soon, but there's a character named Jeff who's been a taxi driver. He drove Gene to his house, and he sees him in the mall, just Jeff figure, and he confronts him, and he's like, "Hey, I remember you. You're Jimmy, or I'm sorry, you're Saul." And basically, it's like a threat to Gene because he's trying to hide, and this person knows who he is, and he doesn't know if he's compromised. And they bring this character back, but he got recasted. And things happen when you're in film. Like sometimes just the work doesn't line up, like the actor's line of work. Like he's on another project, or there could be other factors, like maybe he just doesn't want to do it anymore. In this case, the actor had a different show that he was doing. I think it was on HBO. So they hired a new actor to play Jeff, and that threw a lot of people off. I feel. I already knew about it beforehand, and he is a different type of character. He's not as menacing. He's a little bit more subdued, I guess. I said we'll talk more about this when Sean gets in. But things do happen, and as a writer, director, person who's running the show, you just have to deal with it. Like you just have to make the best of it, and it's not the actor's fault, the new actor's fault that comes into place, or maybe not even anybody's really fault necessarily. But sometimes you just have to move on. You have to keep production going. And I think it's interesting how Jeff's character. There's been like a lot of theories on this character and like what he's doing. Does he work for Kim? Does he what's his angle? And we get to really see who this Jeff character is. So, this is like at least a little bit of insight before we dive into Nippy. For 22 minutes in. Where's Sean? He must have been having some real technical issues. But yeah, like I said, Sean should be coming in any moment. I hope. All right, well, I'm just going to dive a little bit into the episodes then. So in the first episode, we have they show the intro. Like I said, it's in black and white. There's a character named Marianne who's an older lady. She's in the supermarket and she's driving a three-wheeler scooter down the aisle. She's using like some little can grabber. Since she's sitting down, she needs something to grab, like cans and all that off the shelves. But she's grabbing stuff. And
take it back. Can you see me?
Oh heck yeah! Okay, right. Give me one sec. Let me get you properly back in the screen. I've been talking about rambling a little bit about stuff while you were gone. I started diving into a little bit about. Where are you? Sorry.
Problem. I'm the one who should be sorry. So frustrating.
Technical issues happen.
It's like 15 minutes for a computer just to turn back on.
Well, when power goes off, there's really nothing you could do about it. I was actually talking about how I didn't exactly dive into the episode. Actually, I was just starting to dive into the episode 10, but I was talking more of about the black and white. How in the past they used color and now they use black and white in the Gene, and how like it kind of like Saul or Jimmy, such a colorful character, and in general color is so important, and they take that away. It's black and white in Gene's point of view, and it's like they took the life out of him, which in a lot of ways they did. Like his character, and we talked about this in the past, that he's been going like constantly, especially in Breaking Bad. He has like this thing with Walter and Jesse, and he doesn't have time to, or he doesn't make time for him to process exactly what really happened with like his brother and Howard and like this Kim, even,
Doesn't
now.
allow himself the time
Exactly.
for
And now
self-reflection. Yeah.
he has all the time in the world when he's in and that's why he's so depressed, or he has issues
Yeah.
with himself in that, persona or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, the
Anyway.
black and white is really good. Not only does it clarify the time period that we're in, but it also is sort of symbolic that he's in a sort of lifeless state. That
Yes.
the colorfulness of his world is gone away. Yeah.
And
It's also, I think what I was saying before I got cut off was just the idea that there's been a lot of speculation that eventually we're going to see what's going on with Gene. Like, we get these little snippets. At the beginning of each season, we got one scene with Gene in his black and white future time period. And it was sort of demonstrating to us that he's looking over his shoulder. He's anxious. You can piece together the timeline. We know he's not too far out from when he got vacuumed away. And he's still worried about being caught or whatever, and he sort of is. That's the last time we saw him. Someone recognized him. Hey, I think I know you. Go ahead, say the thing. You're on the guy in a commercial, and he tries to play dumb, but the guy pushes, and so we're kind of you people out there, speculating. The show is so rich and layered. There's so much going on. There's lots to speculate about. But one thing to speculate about is, are we gonna get a whole episode of Gene? Are we gonna get like a whole black and white episode?
Yep.
Or maybe multiple black and white episodes? And they broke the pattern at the beginning of this season by not giving us that. They gave us a sort of piece along that line, but not a straight up black and white Gene section. And so I had been wondering maybe I suspected they would have multiple 2-3 episodes, and but I thought who knows if they're going to be like every fourth one or finish it out, but clearly they're finishing it out. I was theorizing after we saw Nippy that they were going to finish it out.
Yeah.
Pretty much finish it out in black and white. It's obvious, and 3 episodes later now that's what they're doing. But
even the titles, like originally there was like point and shoot, black and blue, like it was one games. And something else, and then this it's one title, it's Nippy. Next one is it's Breaking Bad, but it's still one whole, I guess you could argue that.
It's
next
not
one.
X and Y.
Exactly.
The pattern had been for the rest of the season. And I mentioned to you that I've watched and read several interviews with the showrunners, and they said, I'm pretty sure it was Vince Gilligan, his instruction to the directors and writers for these final few episodes was pretend like we're starting a new series. That was his idea. He wants a different tone, a different feel. They wrote new music, everything.
Yeah, and I that is obviously clearly shown. Like I figured that myself. I was talking about a little bit about you brought him up, the character Jeff, and how he was recasted. And I was talking about the reasoning behind casting, and like it sucks when it comes right down to it. But sometimes it's out of the directors, the writers, the showrunners' hands. Sometimes like in this case, the actor who played Jeff just didn't want to do it. He did not want to do it. He couldn't because he was doing an HBO series, I think it was, at the time.
And it's not just that. Like they knew he was doing an HBO series. It's because of Bob's heart attack. Bob Odenkirk had a heart attack.
I wondered that too, actually.
All the filming schedule.
Yes.
And so this guy who was lined up and could do it suddenly couldn't because of this change.
Yeah.
It's unfortunate, but I had a thought on this, by the way. Because I saw a lot of people kind of confused or frustrated by it.
Yeah,
and I thought it was a little weird. Like, why would they recast his character? You know what I mean? I feel like it's sort of like a plot point they were building up.
Yep.
And to change out this actor, and we had a big gap in time as far as people watching this show.
Yep.
It might add confusion
Absolutely.
or people remembering things wrong. Like, it's a weird thing to recast someone in the first place, but this seemed like such a central point they were focusing on.
Yep.
Why would they do that? Well, I came to understand, like, they just didn't have a choice, just because of the nature of, so the main
Yeah, the
character the
big
whole show
beast.
has a heart attack.
Yep.
Have to rearrange around him.
Now they
But
did recast this new person, Haley, or I can't remember his name.
I think Pat Healy is
That's
the name
it.
of the new
Yes.
actor. Yeah.
He has chemistry with Bob. Like he's done something prior with him, and I think that was part of the reason they chose this actor particularly.
I think that he was in a movie with Bob
Yeah.
Odenkirk
Yeah.
a few years ago that was a black and white movie that was titled
Ah.
Nebraska. By the way, it's almost like an Easter egg who they cast. But
That's actually
here's
pretty cool.
the thing I really want to say is I feel like a lot of people were frustrated about the demeanor, the feel and the look of this new actor. That a lot of people thought that Jeff character originally was like this menacing
He
figure,
was. He was.
and this new guy is got more subservient. But I really think it's people are sort of misanalyzing what's going on here, and,
Yep.
and it's understandable because they did switch the actors.
Yeah.
But I think this is the reality of the scenario. And by the way, this is backed up because the writer of the episode said they didn't change anything in the script. That everything that this new Jeff did is what they planned on the original Jeff doing.
I figured that.
A lot of people have this idea that old Jeff would have kicked Saul's butt. Like, no, it's not like not like that actor was gonna do something and they had to change the show because of it. That's people just aren't thinking logically.
Yeah.
The reality is that Jeff originally was in a dominant position. He knew something about Saul.
Yep.
He had something on him. He caught him off guard in the middle of the mall at work. And he was literally standing over him physically, right?
Yep.
And all these things put Jeff in this menacing, dominant position that we perceive.
Mm-hmm.
But the reality is, Jeff is just a doofus, right?
Yep.
And Saul was misinterpreting Jeff because he was scared, because he was caught off guard.
Yep.
And when Saul pieces this together, I think that Saul realizes, wait a minute, why didn't this guy turn me in already?
Mm-hmm.
Schmuck cab driver? This isn't going to be the guy that takes me down. I can figure this out. I think that Jimmy had a read on this guy. He kind of figured it out. It was somewhere between like the guy's demeanor, the actions he had taken so far, maybe what he was wearing, what his job was. That's part of Jimmy's genius. I think his character is arguably a genius. He's not wise, but he's very intelligent. He understands people.
Yep.
He's a con man.
Exactly.
And I think that part of that is being able to read people, and he got a read on this Jeff character, and that's why he was on the phone with Ed thinking about vacuuming himself away, and he suddenly changed his mind. I think that he realized, wait a minute, I think I know what to do. I've got it figured out.
Yep.
And sure enough, Jimmy then goes and puts him in the subordinate position. He shows up at his house with his mom. There's sort of a tacit threat on his mom in that moment.
Yep.
And it makes sense that this guy who at first seemed menacing because he was in the dominant position over Saul, now Saul or Gene is in a dominant position over him. Well, now he doesn't seem so menacing anymore. Of course not. And I think that original actor would have played it the same way. And I think it would have been great to see that. It would have been a great performance by that actor.
Oh, absolutely.
But just the way the cookies crumbled, we don't get to see that. But I think that people are improperly frustrated by this scenario because they don't really understand what the writers were intending.
Yes. I think you're absolutely right on that. Also, it may not help that Jeff was put into this category of there was all these theories out about Jeff, like he's tied to Kim maybe, or he's tied to the government or stuff like that, when he's just a normal dude, a below normal dude possibly even,
and I think that's exactly what Saul figured out. Saul figured out exactly what we as an audience did or should have figured out, is that, wait a minute, why isn't he turning him in already? Why isn't he confronting him in the middle of the mall? What's this guy's plan? He doesn't have a plan.
Yep.
Let me take charge here, is what Saul decides.
Yes. And that kind of goes into, episode 10, where we get introduced to a character named Marianne. That's the mom to Jeff, but she's like riding around in the market, and you kind of get to see, she's just, I don't say frail, but like she tries to take charge, but she's an old lady who's on a scooter. I couldn't help notice she everything's in black and white, but she goes to the meat. What is the color of meat? Red.
Red, I guess.
I always wondered if they intentionally try to put color hints in there. It's really hard to do this in the black and white, but I just. But
here's the thing. Yeah. Go ahead. Sorry.
I was gonna say. So, well, why would they put red? Why would she go into like a meat? She's about to encounter danger, which next scene is. So now that may be
they don't really use red for danger though. They use red for criminality.
Or criminality. Well, she's gonna get scammed when it comes red. I was gonna say comes right down to it.
She's going to, but I think it would have been misleading if it had been in color for us to read her being around red.
Or maybe
when Saul shows up, he should be in red. That makes sense. And my mind was really spinning because they released some behind the scenes footage.
Yeah.
Or imagery, which was in color. And her scooter was actually red.
Really?
I realized it just clearly it doesn't. She's not a criminal. She's, you know what I mean? I don't think that those.
But she's driving maybe into it. But I guess you're right. Maybe.
In that moment, she wasn't mixed up with any criminality, and Saul was. And so if it was in color, I think he would have showed up with a red shirt or a red jacket, or probably, I bet his hat is like a lumberjack plaid red hat that we see him wearing.
Yeah.
If you were going to imagine colors on it. But I don't think that her going toward the meat was. I will say, though, I do believe they are evoking color a couple times, despite it being black and white, and there's other times they're like, maybe, I don't know, I could see it. We're like stretching with the meat thing, or in the actual imagery of the scooter was red, but I feel like we're stretching and unsure. But this is what I am sure about. There's two moments of particular conflict and stress, of uncertainty that Gene goes through. One is right after he makes his proposal to Jeff, when he says, hey, I'll get you into the game.
Right.
And he's kind of confessed who he is and laid out this plan for Jeff, but then he goes home and he turns on the radio scanner.
Yeah.
He's listening to see if the cops are mobilizing because Jeff called them, right?
Yes.
And in this moment, he makes a drink.
Oh, with a yellow thing?
Squeezes lemon juice into the drink.
Yes.
And that definitely evokes yellow, and that was definitely a moment where he was going through uncertainty and conflict. And then they do it again when he has decided to go ahead and run the scam on the cancer patient, even though he kind of shouldn't. He sets this is in the next episode. 2 episodes later,
the lemon thing again.
He sets it up, and the other guys follow up. But while that's happening, he makes the drink and squeezes the yellow into the juice again, or the lemon juice into the drink again. So anyway, point is that I think that to me, that was the clear, definitive, consistent with everything else use of color they had within the black and white. There's others I wonder about, but I'm not so sure.
So, you get introduced to Marianne, and Saul introduces himself by, he's like putting out flyers for a dog that he has named Nippy. I remember when I first watched this, I was like, wait, does he have actually a dog named Nippy? I had to think about that. But of course he doesn't. Of course this is part of the scam. Because he goes like right over to her. She's like stuck on the sidewalk with some ice. And he snips one of her cables so her vehicle doesn't work. And he pushes her into the house. He's just trying to get friendly with her to get really at, to get the help of Jeff. To get basically Jeff involved. And I felt like that was like, I find the Marianne character really interesting. We'll get more on her because it's more of like, obviously, like episode, like especially the latest episode.
Real quick, I'm pretty sure her name is Marion.
Oh, Marion.
Marianne. Yeah.
Oh, you're right. You're right. Yeah. Marion. Correct.
Yeah. And I think it's worth noting that they're so every shot, every little bit they put in the show, it has some sort of meaning. And I think that what they're trying to show in her introduction, like through the grocery store, is that even though she might be old, she's still independent. Like that guy
Yes.
wants to help her get the thing down off the top shelf. So like, I'll ask for help if I need it, you know?
Yep.
And she's kind of snippy with the butcher. She's like, it's supposed to be a pound and a half of meat, not a pound and a quarter or whatever. She's like correcting him on the measurements. And I
Yeah.
think it's trying to show that she has she's aware and independent. She's not helpless and feeble,
Yeah.
even
Yeah.
if
She's
she's
more
older or in
competent
the
than you
scooter or
you
whatever.
expect.
Yeah, and when Saul first, he's sort of trapped her. He got pushed the snow in her path so she can't get home without help, and he
Yeah.
helps her. But she's so resistant at first, and he really kind of has to push and warm up to her. And it shows she's sort of suspicious and reluctant, which comes into play with her character down the road.
Yes. Yes. Also, I want to point out that when they did the title this time, like the title screen with like Better Call Saul, this was clearly different than anything else they've done. Like they like usually show like this little snippet of something, like the way his on the table, the scale, yeah, or something like that.
Being put out, and
it cuts out. I want to say halfway through it, the intro, and it goes into like this like blue screen or something like that, and you see like pixelated colors of the text. Really cool. Like it obviously caught me. I was like, whoa, that was different. The music was silent all of a sudden or something like that.
Yeah. And it makes so much sense too. We talked about how through the course of the series that intro, with the music playing and the directed by and all the starring, the standard sort of intro credits TV shows have. That has been degrading over time.
Yep,
it's like a video, like an old VCR tape, and it's getting like warped and faded, and there's like ghost images bleeding through.
Yep.
And then finally, when we move forward to this new time period, it's a complete shift in the presentation.
Yes. Very cool.
Shift in presentation. Give me 2 seconds. Keep talking, but
yeah. So we get introduced to the new Jeff and Marion. Marion. Okay. And Jeans, they're in the kitchen, and Jeff comes home from his taxi drive job, and is confronted by Gene, Jimmy. And it's really interesting to see Jeff's acting, because he's obviously, like you were saying, he's caught off guard. He's not the one who's attacking or interrogating or whatever you want to call Gene. Gene is in control now, and it's funny also seeing like how Gene responds, like with the expressions, like he like does this thing with his eyebrows, which is really funny. The performance is really neat, in the scene. But he takes him out, and he's like, "Do you want to be in the game?" And Jeff's obviously caught off guard, but basically Gene wants to use Jeff to do more cons.
I don't think that's his plan in the moment. I think that's his plan to get Jeff off his back.
Oh.
I think it becomes his plan down the road. But I think in this moment, just think about, I'm going to skip forward a little bit, but think about how it ends after they do the con. He's like, all right, did you have fun? Because that's it.
Yeah.
Don't come around the mall anymore. You see me coming your way, you go the other way. We're done. And I think that was just his way to implicate them in a crime. So if they try to get him in trouble, they get in trouble too. And
that's a good point.
It's a very convoluted scheme that he's come up with, and it is a piece of his former days. On some level he wants to do this, but I don't think his intention here is to have Jeff be his new partner. I think his intention here is to get Jeff off his back.
That makes sense. Yeah, I agree with that. That makes sense. Now he goes home and he puts on a ring on his pinky. Do you know the significance of that?
That's Marco's ring. Marco was his buddy from back when he was Slippin' Jimmy in Illinois. Yes. And in season 1, there was an episode where the two of them hung out. Marco ended up having a heart attack and died, and his mother gave Jimmy the ring, and he's been wearing that ring throughout the show throughout the he wore it as Saul, he's wore it as Jim, he's had it the whole time, except as Gene. He has been wearing it as Gene. But in that same moment where I was talking about, when he goes and he turns on the police scanner and he makes that drink, then he digs out his old box of memories,
Yep.
treasures, pulls that ring out, puts it on, and I think that's him like
Evolving
going
into
back to his old persona.
Yeah,
like
the
he's
Slipping
taking
Jimmy.
on the Slipping Jimmy. I guess we see this swirl of personalities coming out of Gene in this moment. Part Saul, part Jimmy, part Gene, or part Slippin' Jimmy, part Jimmy McGill. I even see little pieces of Mike and Walt through him here.
Interesting.
I'll talk about it more when we get to it.
But so he goes to work like a normal day. He works at Cinnabon. This is like a minor thing, but I always wondered this. Cinnabon, I actually looked up the color scheme for that. It is blue, white, and either teal or light blue or something like that. I have no clue if they put any thought into that, or if that's just black and white because they just want to not deal with that. But I did research on that too. So
yeah, I thought about it too. Same thing when I saw those behind the scenes images. He had that blue shirt on, and I also Googled Cinnabon, and they have several different uniforms. There are black shirts and gray shirts and beige shirts, and my guess is maybe like different regions or different time periods, maybe different positions. Like a manager wears something different than a cashier or whatever, But the fact that there were different colors, and the one they chose for Gene was the bluish green one.
Yeah,
it's what made me think that the other colors might be meaningful. After when I had just seen Nippy, and then saw those behind the scenes shots, I was really suspicious of Marion, because the blue shirt that Gene had at Cinnabon added up to everything they showed us so far. So Marion's scooter being red, I thought for sure she was a bad guy on some level, but apparently not. Apparently maybe some colors just look good in black and white, or maybe since it is black and white, they don't have to worry as much about the colors and making everything perfect. So
no, that makes sense. Like in black and white, if you have, let's just say, everything more white, it's just going to look like it's going to blend together. But if you have this, black and white relies a lot on contrast. So that makes a lot of sense, actually, if you think about it in that way.
It's probably not that much different between orange and blue. It just looks gray instead of black or white. It's hard to distinguish, So,
but anyway, I mean, obviously, you could argue too that like Gene is trying to do the lawful thing, or try to do the right thing when he's at Cinnabon.
Yeah,
you could argue that.
Right, that's it. Not right. It's also not just straight blue. It's kind of a bluish green.
Yeah,
and they use green as a color of facade.
Exactly.
It's hidden,
I thought
covered,
about that,
and so like it made a lot of sense, which is why I thought the other things might make sense too. But
but he kind of goes to like this. He's in the mall, and there's like this clothes store, and he obviously decides to come up with this elaborate con. He maps out the whole clothes store. He goes to the security guards because that's important to his plan. That's interesting because I guess like he fainted, or he had to call the security guard came to him when he was on the floor, and he's like, call my lawyer.
Episode.
Huh? Yeah.
In earlier snippets we saw Gene. There was one scene where he passed out, and an ambulance had to come and take him to the hospital, and that's where we first saw Jeff when he went home from the hospital in a cab. That was the Jeff character, and there was another moment where he just witnessed a shoplifter, and he was trying to just keep his head low and not get mixed up in anything. But the cops come over and they see that he might have saw where the shoplifter went, so he kind of like nods with his gaze, like he's over there. And they get the kid, but Gene can't hold it in, and I think this is really relevant. It's even a clue early on to where things are gonna end up going. He just blurts out, "Get a lawyer!" He just doesn't have him in him. To lay low, and that's kind of like my suspicion all along, is that Gene's probably gonna end up in jail. This is
Yeah.
a little bit of a tangent. We've probably talked about it in past episodes, but I don't think this is going to be some morbid tragedy where he gets gunned down in the streets. And there's no way he like rides off into the sunset with a happy ending, Kim in his arm, right? That it's
Yeah.
somewhere in the middle. And I think going to jail would be sort of appropriate. He kind of
Yeah.
deserves to go to jail.
Right.
And it makes sense that he would, because there's no way he's just going to lay low and work on a Cinnabon for the next 30 years of his life, right? He just doesn't have it in him. And they've already kind of shown us that. And it's becoming more and more obvious in this Nippy episode
Mhm.
when he's putting together this scam. It's just part of his nature. He just can't help himself from getting caught up in these schemes. So his mind
Yeah.
running away with these plans, finding ways to take angles and take advantage of society and authority.
Mhm.
It's just part of who he is. It always has been, and it probably always will be. And eventually, he's probably gonna get caught, right? Or if
Yep.
he doesn't turn himself in first, you know. So,
Yeah. No, you're
and
right.
I think that's what we see playing out here with Jeff, is that he just pieces together what it would take to rob this department store. He's
Yep.
like scopes out the cameras. He looks at the tags to find like the most expensive things in the store, so
Yeah.
they don't waste time, and wants to make sure just to get the money stuff. And he buddies up to the security guards, and that's what you were bringing up, that the
Yes.
security guard recognized him. You're the guy that told someone to get a lawyer.
Yep.
So Saul's kind of got his work cut out for him to win this guy over, but he's able to do it.
Yep. He is. I love how there's like a montage of like him preparing this elaborate scheme or con, him butting up with the security guards. I freaking love this montage. I tend to like a lot of the montages that are done in Better Call Saul. They just make it fun. They put some like really interesting music choice, or good, it's good music choice. The editing's amazing. I don't know. I freaking loved
Very
it.
efficient storytelling.
Exactly.
They're
Yeah.
really,
Yeah.
really good at montages. I would say it's a feature of the show, is the montages.
Yes.
There's no exception. Something you can see through the course of it too, by the way, is this shift in Gene's demeanor. He goes from this slumped over, making his way through his boring day to like, here we go. I'm gonna come to the department store. What's up, security guy? Like, he gets a pep in his step and he smile a little, and
he does alive. Like it brings life to him, and it makes sense. Like you're saying, like you just can't break away from it. Like it's just inevitable that he's just gonna do this again. I wonder if like Chuck, because there's been like a lot of discussions with Chuck and him and this issue. I think of like, I wish I knew about the earlier stuff of like how much like Chuck may have foreshadowed some stuff like this with arguments.
Chuck did say, he's like, I can't remember exactly, but he said something like, Jimmy with the law license is like a monkey with a machine gun or something like that.
Yeah.
You try to warn people, like, he didn't want Jimmy working for HHM. Like, in certain ways, it seems like Chuck was unfair, if not mean, to Jimmy.
Yep.
But in other ways, it seemed like he was right. I even made the point one time that maybe if Chuck did give Jimmy a chance, he wouldn't have gone down this path. Maybe
I thought about that, honestly.
Maybe
yeah.
It's not, but think about, maybe it was too late. Maybe Chuck already sent him on this bad choice road.
Yeah.
But Jimmy did get the job with the good law firm. You remember, there was a little time period when he got a job with a different law firm. He had an office, and he was getting paid, and he kind of had some respect and a position. And he got himself fired. Remember, it was so...
This was Clifford, right?
Yeah, this is it. I think it was called Maine. Shoot, I forgot that Clifford Maine was one of the partners, and there was another, and it was called Maine and something. I can't remember. But anyway, yeah. And in his office, there was a switch on the wall. It said, "Leave this on." It had like a piece of tape over it. And he like kind of looked around and I took the tape off, flipped it off. He just, for no reason, he just can't follow authority. He just doesn't have it in him.
Yeah.
And he ends up getting himself fired from that job. He just doesn't like it. He made the commercial trying to get people at Sandpiper facilities to join the class action lawsuit. But he didn't ask for anyone's permission. He just did it. And on some level, maybe it's good. But the point is that in this sort of structured, legitimate normal world that a law firm is in, you can't just willy-nilly do whatever you want like Saul wants to. And
Yep.
he just ends up getting he's wearing flamboyant suits, he's like spilling his coffee, just pulling pranks around the office, just trying to get himself fired because it's not what he really wants. And I wonder if Chuck was right. If he had hired Jimmy on as a lawyer, how would that have gone? You know what I
Yep.
mean?
Yep. No, I think.
Maybe because of that scenario with Chuck, it led Jimmy it reinforced Jimmy's disdain for authority.
Yep.
And that's why he did this at the other law firm. But maybe Chuck's right, and that's just who he is, and it was going to happen no matter what.
Mhm.
And the world would have been better off if he didn't get a law degree, and he was correct for not hiring him at the law firm.
Now, bringing up the firing thing, that was another montage. It may be my favorite montage ever. I love that scene, or the how they narrated that scene.
Yeah.
But this is up there, by the way. This montage is for. When I rewatched it, I was like, man, I just got so. There's like a certain level of like excitement I get for like how well edited it is, and I don't know, it gets me excited. Anyways, so another good or great thing that the showrunners do is they set up things so well. They slow pace at first, and then as they like put more of the pieces together, it's kind of like the Howard thing, except Howard was like multiple episodes, but they're like telling you the most important things to get excited for this con, or to expect, or for you to expect what to expect in this scene. Like he, and the attention to detail, like how he's like walking around and counts, and then he like makes this maze outside in the outside, and has Jeff constantly go through the maze. He's like, get 3 items, and then he like makes him memorize like a rhythm, which is a catchy rhythm, because it's like anybody could do it. Saul makes it easy for anybody to do this, which it takes a level of like genius to do this, I feel, almost, but it's impressive.
He definitely pieces the scam together well. Like it's, and maybe theoretically anyone could do this, but can anyone do this in 3 minutes? Part of the whole thing.
Exactly. Yeah.
Buddying up to the security guards, he's bringing them these Cinnabons, and he times how long it takes to eat them, because that's how long they won't be watching the camera. Yeah. And so how quick can you run back and forth in a department store? How many items can you get? We only have 3 minutes. Let's get the most expensive ones. Let's have the path. Let's have the course set out. So by the time Jeff gets in there to do it, he's already practiced. They've already got it down.
Yeah. So. Another thing too is like this is like when I think his name is Frank, is one of the security guards, the main security guard that Gene has to watch, and make sure that he's not looking at the monitors. They use the cinnamon bun as like a timer. It's like a clock, and like there's like a moment where like it shows like an above shot, and he like turns the cinnamon, and that's like the halfway point, and like this little things like that from a filming and narrative perspective is amazing. I just love that, like little attention to detail, I call it. And so when the actual con happens, like, so they have all the pieces ready. They just need to get Jeff into the store, and so they set up like a delivery truck drops off this big freight at the last minute, and the store manager or manager is like, you need to take this away, but she winds up compromising with the person on the phone, which is Gene, to leave the place, that this big freight overnight, and that's the freight that Jeff is in to go rob the store. But I like how they like what to expect. So I was standing in the back of my head as like Jeff is going into the store to rob all the stuff. What's going to go wrong? Something is going to go wrong. Nothing ever goes right. Especially from a narrative, like if you want to make it interesting.
Nothing ever goes perfect.
Yeah. And at the very, very beginning of even like the freight coming in to the back room, the manager's like, oh, there's this like little mark on the floor. Can you polish it? And it's just like, it's like obvious that's going to be the issue, but like they just make it so like not a bigger deal almost. that makes any
Yeah,
sense?
I don't even know if it was quite obvious. I think that they were showing it. I mean, maybe it was, but it wasn't only done for the sake of foreshadowing.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
also developing this manager character. She's like
exactly.
on top of things, right?
Yeah,
She's like,
that's what I thought
get
about.
this,
Yes,
call here, who's this person? What's the next shift? Clean up that spot on the floor.
yeah,
It's easy to miss that in the blur of her activity.
yep,
And that blur of activity is meant to show that she's kind of like on top of things and getting the job done and everything.
yeah, yeah.
And so when it comes time for this crate to be delivered that we realize Jeff is in, and that's
Yeah,
how they're going to get the goods out or whatever. It's there's this concern that we have that that's a part of the plan it's not going to work because she's this on top of it manager. She's
yep,
not going to allow this crate to just be left in her storage room, and we've kind of forgotten about the spot on the floor that needed to be cleaned up.
exactly.
Then all of a sudden, and it's such a great imagery that we're watching Jimmy and the security guard
Yeah,
at the same time that we're watching the security cameras.
yeah,
Jimmy is also he positions himself so that he can see, the security guard can't, but the filmmakers position it so that we also get to see.
yep.
And so we and Jimmy at the same time see Jeff run by and slip and fall, and I reacted just like Jimmy did. Like
I was doing the same thing.
this
I was like,
gas,
okay,
my
is this
yeah.
happening? And it's so funny
I'm
seeing.
sure millions of people across the world watching this show simultaneously gasp at the same time at this moment.
I remember it's funny too because like rewatching it, you also like Jimmy's like taking a sip because that was like part of his getting used to the security guard.
His
But he takes a sip and he
routine with them.
spits it out. He's like, he's like, that just happened. And you just expect Jeff to get up immediately, but he's on the floor for like I don't know, a minute.
His head when he fell, probably
Yeah.
knocked unconscious partly. And
Like it's like
a
also
concussion or
rewatching it, I
whatever.
was like laughing because it's just so it's so amazingly told, I guess. But yeah, I was like in shock because like I said, I was expecting like Jeff to screw up something. This was pretty detailed. I mean, even though it's easy, one, go grab this boot, two, go grab this. I was expecting him to get greedy, or he's not like a straight A, but like a professional thief. He's still an amateur. So I was just expecting something else. So when that happened, I was like, oh my God, did that just happen?
I mean, even a professional might have slipped in that
No,
spot too.
absolutely.
It's hard to say, yeah.
No, I'm pretty sure they would have. Because, you're trying to go fast on all that. And I mean, he had his head pretty hard. So you get this like interesting moment too with Saul and Frank, where Saul has to make sure that Frank doesn't look at the monitors, but he also doesn't know if Jeff is all right. Like, he may just be down for the count, but he tries to like get him to not look at the cameras because he's now done eating his cinnamon bun. Frank. So he starts going on about like how his life is shitty, which part of this I think was just true. Like he starts like digging a little bit deep. Like he brings up Chuck. He's like, my parents are dead. My brother is dead. And obviously some of it's an act, but some of it you had to wonder was like hit something in him.
Yeah.
Because like also rewatching it too, like I just felt something there. But what were we gonna say?
Just agreeing with you basically that he's got to think of something to totally capture Frank's attention. And so a personal tragic story is one way to do it. But on some level, he hasn't thought this out. And probably as an experienced conman, he knows he's got to be careful. He can't like make up too many details that could be discounted later or that you might not remember later. So kind of telling the truth is a good way to not get caught in a lie. Does that make sense? Like he doesn't know quite where this is going, like in the next couple minutes or the next couple weeks. And so he just pulls from the truth. And it's kind of a tough truth, and it's weird. The show often has this like walking this thin line between funny and sad.
Yep.
It's kind of kind of funny that Jeff just slipped, but it's also scary. Is he okay? Is he going to get caught? Is Saul going to get caught? And it's also maybe kind of funny to hear him fake crying and trying to distract Frank with this personal story, but it's also kind of sad to remember. Yeah, Chuck really is dead. It was a really well written and well performed moment too.
Exactly.
Part of why I love this show so much.
Yeah, no, absolutely. But obviously, Gene distracts Frank long enough for Jeff to get back to consciousness and get up and put the stuff in the thing. And then he starts running, and I was like, what is he doing? Why is Jeff running back into the store? And then he goes into the bathroom, and I was like, oh, that's actually really smart. I assumed he was going to go back into the crate, but
they filled the crate up with all that stuff.
Exactly. So it just makes so much.
Too. So when he has like the rhyme scheme for Jeff to remember, like the course of where to go and what to get, and it's like, 1, cashmere sweaters and done. 2, Air Jordans for you. 3, and eventually you realize, wait, this count is going up to like 18, 19, 20. It's a lot of stuff,
It is.
And it's got kind of has to be a lot of stuff. Like, even if he's getting the most expensive things in a department store, $100 per item, like $100 shoes, $100 shirts or briefcase, all the different things. Maybe a few things were only 80 or 140, but they're probably averaging around 100.
I think they mentioned like 500 was one thing, but yeah.
Maybe there was some item that was $500, but anyway, it would be oh yeah, the suits. He was like, how much could we sell these? Yeah, Armani suits is one of the things they sold, and that might be several hundred. But let's just say that it was 20 different items that they sold 3 each of. That would be 60 times an average of $100 each. That'd be $6,000. And I think that later on, when Saul's like telling him, making him understand what crime they committed, he's like, transporting goods over state lines of over $5,000 or something, that is a federal offense or whatever. So yeah, it was they were trying to make this worth doing, right? Saul's got to make this guy really feel like he's in the game. Saul's got to make it worth the time and the effort they're putting in. They're not going to do this to spill pair of shoes. They're stealing thousands of dollars worth of stuff.
Yep.
More expensive stuff that might be easier to turn over, to resell to someone or whatever. But it's still a large volume of stuff. It's still 60 items. And Jeff can't fit back in that crate along with the 60 items. Does that make sense? So, So yeah, he hides in the bathroom until they open up the next day. Then he just walks out and leaves. And
you get this like nice moment of Jeff, like, he's proud of himself. Which he should be. I mean, he just robbed a store.
Maybe a little impressed with Saul too. Like, hey, it really worked. Yeah. Did everything he said, and it all worked out. Yeah.
But then you get the next scene with all of them in the garage, and you talked about this, but like, Saul's just pretty much an asshole. Like, he's like, you're not my friend. I pretty much am blackmailing you, so you better don't screw me over. So I'm just going to screw you over, with the law. And then, and that's it. And you have to say it. Like, we're done, like, makes them say it. Like, they're like, that's funny. And like, it just gets serious. And you're like, ugh.
Yeah, it was so unexpected to them. They didn't quite know how to take it. And they thought maybe he was joking around at first. But he's like, no, I'm not joking around. I'm serious. We're done. I need to hear you say it. And that reminded me of Mike. Remember how Mike told Jimmy and Kim, after they kind of cleaned everything up, he's giving them instructions for the next day. He's like, I need to hear you say it. You understand? Okay. And Mike also said the same thing to Jesse way back in Breaking Bad. When that was the first time we saw Mike, was when Jesse found Jane dead, and Mike came out to, clean up the house and the drugs and everything, and gave Jesse the story. And it's like, the cops are going to come. There's going to be an ambulance. You tell them this. You found her, and that's all you know. Now let me hear you say it.
Yep. No, you're right. So after that,
but if you notice, well, go ahead.
Well, if you're still on that scene, we could continue the scene. I'm gonna go like
I was gonna go to the next scene. I realize that's probably what you were about to do.
Marion, she like comes and checks on them, and they're like pretending to like fix a car. And I feel like this is like the seed of like planning and for her that like something's up. right then, it definitely wasn't. Like she still thought they were fine, but I felt like over obviously the course of time with Marianne, she realizes something is up. Going with them.
That moment is part of what made me realize both that, especially over time and the more you absorb, and I'm hearing interviews with the showrunners and stuff. But like as I was watching the show, that moment kind of clicked in my mind. It seemed like they were done, right? It seemed like part of the point of this episode was to deal with this Jeff issue, right?
Yep.
Like through the course of the show, we've been following this Better Call Saul timeline. We've been watching, his relationship with Kim, and the cartel stuff with Gus, and it seemed like all that stuff was summed up in the prior episode in Fun and Games. They literally buried Howard and Lalo, right? We see both Gus and Mike kind of at the moment of realizing who they are. They're cold-blooded killers. Mike is just going to continue to be this tool for Gus, and Gus is going to continue on his quest for revenge. And I feel like they were kind of summing up those characters and those storylines. And so now we got to go, and then they did the same thing with Saul. We kind of leap forward. Kim leaves Jimmy, and then we see Jimmy has become Saul.
Right.
Well, now what about Gene? Who's sure enough, okay, we got to deal with Gene. That's the storyline that's still dangling, and here we are resolving that. And now it's done. Jimmy gets a read on Jeff, realizes he's probably not going to turn him in anyway, but let me get him off my back by involving him in the game. We work out this scheme, go through with it. It works. You got the money. Now leave me alone. If I get in any trouble, you'll get in any trouble too. We're not friends. We're done. Seems like that should just be the end of the episode. For some reason, get a little bit more. Arian comes back in. Hey, what's going on? Jimmy, come get a drink. You got to wash your hands. My boy got mixed up in a bad crowd in Albuquerque, but you're a good influence on him. I'm like, why are they giving us all this extra Marion stuff?
Yep.
It must not be done.
Yeah.
That's what I started to figure out. Something further, and of course, again, in hindsight, we know it now. But if we had done this podcast the week after, I still would have been predicting that next week we're gonna see more of Jeff and or Marion.
Yep.
I don't know why else they would have given us that little added-on scene there, which is also sort of a clue that, because at that time people were still, there was sort of this expectation a lot of people had that we were going to get into the Breaking Bad timeline, that we were going to see Saul with Walt and Mike and whatever. And but I realized that no, that's just not what they're doing. They already told the Breaking Bad story. What else are we going to find out?
Yep.
Now, they did show us in this next episode that we're about to talk about that there was a little bit more to show us there, but it was all relative to the Gene storyline. They weren't like, it wasn't necessarily like this big background insight into what was going on with Breaking Bad. Kim died or whatever, like all these people trying to understand why Kim wasn't part of it. I feel like they told the Breaking Bad story. That's not what they're doing right now. They're telling the Gene, Jimmy, Saul story. And I realize that that's probably this next episode that we see is probably going to be more of that. I think we're going to move forward in this black and white Gene time period, and we're not going to, the show Better Call Saul is not going to spend these last couple episodes becoming Breaking Bad. We already saw Breaking Bad.
Exactly.
And
yeah, I remember when I first watched this episode 2, I realized that like they had all these theories about Jeff and that he's like working for these people, like Kim or somebody like that. And I realized the point of Jeff to me was for Gene or for Jimmy to get himself back. Like he used him, and now he's starting to become that, slipping Jimmy again. He's starting to gain himself. He's not just like drone pretty much that's going around at the mall. He's trying to find who he really is again.
He's starting to.
At least starting to. Yeah.
Remember the final scene? We see him pull out that shirt. He goes on his lunch break, which he's so happy at work now, having accomplished this scheme. He doesn't realize it's time for lunch, and someone has to remind him. It's like, oh yeah. And he goes into the department store, just kind of look around, kind of like maybe Jeff. I had a little point of pride in what they did there, right? and he pulls this shirt off the rack, which
Yep.
once again, kind of like the lemon, the kind of evoking color, even in black and white,
Yep.
because this is not just a plain shirt.
No,
It's
it's
got
just
all this kind of twists and pattern of a design.
with the
And
tie
what do
too.
you think that pattern is like blue, black, and gray,
No,
right? No, it's like orange and purple and green, right? It's
exactly
gonna
what
be
he.
gaudy, flashy, Saul style, right?
Yep.
But puts it back, puts it back on a shelf. He's not there yet. He's gonna get there, but Jeff wasn't really what did it.
Right, right, right.
Tim is what does it. Jeff continues to be a tool of his, but I did suspect that he wasn't purely going back to Gene, right? He didn't exactly embrace Saul in that moment, but I knew he wasn't going back to Gene. You know why? He
Because
still had that ring on. Still had
ah,
Marco's ring on.
that makes
And you have
sense.
to
Yeah.
look close. I had to rewind it and pause it 3 or 4 times because they were really hiding it. He was like carrying his lunch in one arm, and when he picked the shirt up off the thing, he was like holding it in front of his body, and they kept showing his right hand. But finally, there's this moment when he reaches forward real quick, and like, oh, oh, there it is. And you could also see it when he was at the Cinnabon underneath his glove. You could see it there, but they really obscured it. It was there, but you really had to be looking for it,
Yeah.
which I think is on purpose, just like every other little thing in this show. I think that they did want it to be there, but they weren't trying to be obvious about it. I think they want us as an audience to look hard, to pay attention, to find the details. They're going to give it to us, but they're not going to shove it in our face. They're assuming we're talking about it and we're rewatching it and we're
Yep.
sharing notes with each other. It's a community that I think that I appreciate, that I feel like they're accounting for that when they make this show.
Yeah. And that dives us into episode 11, Breaking Bad. Where I assume we're done with like episode 10.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. So, the intro has Saul. So when Saul was first introduced into the show of Breaking Bad, he encounters Walter and Jesse. Like at least this is one of the scenes. I shouldn't say it's the very first scene, but it's one of the scenes. And they pull him in front of like this graveyard or dug-in pit, and they threaten Saul. This is Walter and Jesse threaten Saul, and they bring back that scene. You get to see the inside of the RV scene, pretty much. Like what happened pretty much before and after what we saw in Breaking Bad. So obviously when they first showed this, I was like, oh, it's that scene, and then they like clarify by showing like the gun holes or whatever in the RV. So you like realize, okay, this is that scene. And obviously he also says, he's like, it was Ignacio or whatever, I think that's like they cut the scene right there. But we knew that they were gonna.
For anyone out there who isn't aware that moment in Breaking Bad when Saul was first introduced, and he thinks he's been kidnapped, by cartel guys, and he's like pleading for his life, and he's like, "Who sent you? Was it Lalo? It wasn't me. Ignacio did it." That was a throwaway line. And by the way, in an interview with Peter Gould and Vince Gilligan, Peter Gould said that he didn't care about that line. He wasn't worried about tying that in. No, I think Vince Gilligan said that, I think. But Peter Gould was pushing for that meaning to come around, and Vince Gilligan was like, Peter was so right. I'm so glad we did, because it gave us these characters, Nacho and Lalo, who were so outstanding. But it is interesting that a throwaway line they had no intention for is integral to this whole new storyline and these whole awesome new characters that they put into pop culture.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. I think that's like it's insane that they could do something like that.
Now, I've got a few things to say about this episode, and they don't perfectly tie in to just kind of going through the story chronologically.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to decide if I should just spit it out now or like wait till.
Well, I feel like we should just talk about all of this scene. Like I don't want to like talk about the scene because it was the intro and then come back to it when it happened. We could just like do this whole scene, the whole Breaking Bad.
Well, because they cut back and forth to this scene a few times through the episode.
Yeah.
This episode was really unique in that it didn't follow. It had sort of a pattern of presentation no other episode has ever had before.
Yeah.
It's really unique. And a main thing that I want to say about this episode and this scene specifically is that I don't think I think they did a good job of not just making this fan service. I knew it was something that the showrunners had made a point of several times in interviews, that they didn't just want to have random cameos by Walt and Jesse. That they wanted it to be something that was organic and integral to Saul's storyline. They just want to stick it in for fans, like, oh look, finally Walt and Jesse. They wanted it to be
Yep.
meaningful with the story that they were telling and not random. And and so that's, I was kind of trying to think. I was also sort of expecting to see some of the Breaking Bad time period and trying to think of what they could show us in that time period with Walt and Jesse. It wasn't just fan service. What is it that we need to know about that? How are they going to do this? I couldn't figure out. And I realized that what they did is that when they showed this moment, there wasn't really any particular detail about this moment that we didn't know or needed to know or couldn't
Right.
have figured out in our own minds. What they're doing is they're creating a parallel. And it is sort of revealing. It is sort of revealing without directly telling us something that was happening in the Breaking Bad time period, was that Saul had more of an influence on things than we realized.
Yes, I
He
got that.
really pushed to get involved with Walt and Walt to get involved with Gus and everything. And we'll get to that a little bit more because there were other shots with Mike and other stuff through this episode.
Mm.
But here's the thing, and I can take a little credit for this because there were pieces of this that I figured out. But there is someone out there called Courtney Reviews, and she pieced together even way more than I did about this. So check this out. Do you remember when Saul's kind of piecing together? He's like, "What is this? Frank Whale's laboratory on wheels?" And he's kind of like looking through all the beakers and
Yeah.
chemicals and stuff in this RV. Frank Wales, I might be saying the name wrong. I might not have been Frank Wales, but whatever name he said,
Hmm.
I think it was Frank Wales, was the director of the original 1930 something Frankenstein.
Oh wow. Didn't you watch that?
I did. And 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 through the course of that, Jimmy's kind of looking around and he's asking questions,
Yep.
and Jesse gives a couple answers. Walt's like, no details, no details, but Saul's still piecing it together. And he's like, so you guys cook it up here. So that makes you. He points to Jesse. That makes you Igor, and
You
you're
Heisenberg.
Heisenberg. He says,
Yeah.
and Heisenberg is sort of like monster. He becomes a monster. Igor was Frankenstein's assistant. Now, a lot of times, Frankenstein and Frankenstein's monster, they get juxtaposed. Like, really, Dr. Frankenstein created a monster.
Right.
Okay. But a lot of times people call the monster Frankenstein. But almost either way you look at that, it still kind of makes sense. Like, Eisenberg could be a monster, but he's also like a mad scientist cooking up the meth and all this
Mhm.
stuff. But if you think of it, Gene, Saul, Jimmy,
Mhm.
he's Dr. Frankenstein. He's creating the monster. He is setting up this course for Walt to become the criminal mastermind.
And to take
And
them down.
there's even another piece to it. What's the name that Jimmy uses in his scams? What's the fake name that he uses?
Slipping Jimmy?
Victor?
Oh, Victor. Yes. Yeah, Victor. I remember.
You know what Dr. Frankenstein's name was?
Was it Victor?
Victor Frankenstein.
I didn't know that.
Like, I noticed the little Frankenstein reference, but I did not realize how deep it went. Later on in the episode, when he's talking to Mike, and Mike's warning him, don't get mixed up with these guys, an amateur. And
Yeah.
Jimmy's like, you see an amateur, but I see 170 pounds of clay to mold. Kind of like he's going to create a monster out of the clay. It's another Frankenstein reference. There was one more. Okay. So the second to last, pretty sure third to last episode. This is the third to
No,
last episode that we're
yeah.
talking about now. The third to last episode, I'm pretty sure, of Breaking Bad was Ozymandias. Ozymandias is a poem, and it's written about. I'm super paraphrasing, but the idea is about I don't know, a warrior, a conqueror, or whatever, who kind of defeats all his enemies, and he's king of the nation or whatever. But the thing is, he's on top of his tower, surrounded by desert and destruction. He's isolated himself. Everything he loved or cared about, whatever he thought he was in charge of, he is destroyed, and he's separated from it. Kind of like Walter White. Like, he had this sort of success, he made all this money, but he's in trouble with the law. His family's running away from him. The people around him are all dead, right? He's like, good job, Ozymandias. It's like, I guess you won. Are you happy now? Like, that's the idea of this poem, right? And you see how it fits Walter White.
Yeah.
Kind of fits Saul also, right?
Yep. Yeah.
The parallel there. Guess what? Do you know who wrote Ozymandias? Percy Shelley. Percy Shelley is the husband of Mary Shelley. Mary Shelley, who wrote Frankenstein.
Oh, Jesus.
Can you believe how much layers they're getting in there? Like,
that's impressive.
Yeah.
It's funny because isn't Heisenberg like the name he came up with because it was like something to do with like chemistry or something like that? It was like a professor or
yeah.
So it's really funny that they even like they could get that detailed in something else, you know.
Yeah, all the different sort of allusions and literary references and it all seems sort of natural and you know, you wouldn't even think about it until it's brought to your attention. But when it's brought to your attention, you realize how much more meaning there is to it and how they were doing it throughout the whole freaking episode and how it ties back to the it's crazy. Anyway, yeah, just pointing out how this show, every single little thing in it has some meaning to be construed, has some extra layer, some extra value, some clue, some reference. It's so rich. There's so much thought and effort going into this show. Even for all that, I guarantee you there's more I haven't even pieced together yet. So.
That's crazy. So
That's
yeah,
a little bit of a tangent. The point I was really wanting to make there, I mean, I really wanted to say all that too, but I really wanted to make the point that what we're seeing is this parallel to the mistakes that Jimmy or Saul or whoever was making back with Walt. He's still making them now.
Yeah.
The point of this scene isn't so much so we can see Walt and Jesse one more time. The point of this scene is to show that Jimmy should not have gotten mixed up with Walt, but he did it anyway.
Yep. And
Jimmy should not get mixed up with this cancer victim Han that he's going to do it anyway. He's making the same mistakes now that he made back then. And it's kind of like what we were saying before in that last episode, the idea that we kind of realized that like Gene isn't just going to lay low for the rest of his life. He can't not get mixed up in these things. Yep. He does it over and over again, right? So
it's funny too because also, you know, this is going to the Mike thing. Mike has been right a good majority of the time. You know, like
been wrong a few times.
He has been wrong. That's why I said a majority. Yeah. And I think I remember him being very reluctant in Breaking Bad about Walter. But obviously in this scene, he even tells before Walter is even brought up to Gus, he's like, no, you should ignore this guy. This guy is going to be the downfall of everything. Yeah. So Mike was right, you know, like it's more, I guess, concrete, you know, like, and the fact that like you said that, you know, Saul was just influenced, you know, a lot of the downfalls, I guess.
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess that would like highlight like the stuff in the Breaking Bad timeline. I don't think if there's anything else in that you know, because there's a scene with Jesse and Walt, and there was a scene with Mike. I don't think there was another scene in this episode.
There was a real quick clip that again tied into the sort of the motif or message or whatever they were trying to get across. Was in that first episode that Saul was in, after he I don't know, wins over Walt and Jesse in the desert or whatever. Yeah. At the end of the episode, he shows up at Walt's school. He walks into his classroom.
Which that happens in the show.
Taken aback by that. And so they didn't even show us the whole thing. It's just a little bit of a reminder that he's approaching the school and he's reaching for the door. And it was like a 3-second little clip, and they spliced that to Jimmy smashing the window to break into the cancer victims' house.
You do remember he actually does visit him at the school, right?
In the original Breaking Bad episode, he went to
yeah.
we see the full conversation that he had.
Yeah.
which was against Mike's wishes.
Yep.
That was Saul pushing for this thing that Mike thought was unwise. And just like we see Jimmy pushing for this thing that Jeff is told, or not Jeff, but Buddy. I guess Jeff wasn't exactly excited about it, but his friend Buddy, the other guy, kind of
Yep.
mixed up in their scams, was adamantly trying to stop him from doing it. But
So in this episode, oh wait, there's also some stuff with Francesca. Forgot about that.
that's the next one, isn't it?
No. So
Was it?
the very first scene after the intro is Francesca is at like a tenant's house, and she's like basically telling.
No, I think that's the next episode. That's the next one.
No, that's Breaking Bad. That's this episode. The next episode is with Kim.
Oh, you're right. Yes, that's right. Because he calls in that episode, but we don't hear it.
Yep.
And in the next one, we hear Kim's side. You're right. Sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So for one, we get to see Francesca in present, well,
Man,
and future in black and white. What's up? Oh yeah.
A lot into these episodes. I forgot. Yeah.
And I think this is the first time we get to see her in Gene's timeline, Francesca.
Yeah.
That's
for sure.
But obviously, she's not in jail. She's just trying to live her everyday life. She's dealing with issues like the FBI or whatever is like tracking her and all that. And, she's like more annoyed with the situation, but she's overall fine, but we get, she like goes to, this, abandoned gas station to get a call from Saul or Jimmy. And they pretty much
just
give
so
us
you remember, Flint or anyone out there listening, this was set up. I don't know if you remember, but I think it was around season 4. We got a cold open.
Yes.
Of Saul like cleaning out his office, Francesca shredding paper. Saul had, I think that's when he got out that little shoebox of all his little treasures and memories.
Yeah.
Puts a bunch of cash in a duffel bag, and he's getting ready to call the vacuum guy, and in that flurry, he gives Francesca instructions to be at some payphone, and I think it was November 12th at 3:00 or something like that.
Yeah.
And that's what we see in this episode.
We thought it was going to be Kim, and we were wrong and right.
Yeah.
Because he does get information about Kim. We just didn't realize it was through a different means. But yeah, so she basically gives. I feel like this was like a way of giving the audience closure to certain things, like what's going on with Heel.
Definitely.
Heel's, he's fine. He's like in a different state. He's not in that safe house, basically.
The last we saw him, he was just like waiting for Hank to come back.
Exactly, and we know what happened.
Hank had like off the books. Hank was like breaking a bunch of rules, trying to figure out Walt and what he was up to and everything. And he basically, I don't know, I don't want to misquote the legal terms, but he was inappropriately holding Huel, and then left, and then got killed, and so we never knew what happened to Huel. And they kind of clarified, because of Hank breaking whatever rules, it kind of allowed for Huel to not get in trouble, and he went back to Louisiana, which we knew is where he was from. So we get confirmation. Saul, runs through all these different characters.
Like Skylar.
This person.
We know what happens to Skylar. And it was just like a neat, like little, just like I said, I felt like it was for the audience. We get this like when Francesca's driving, we see like instead of Better Call Saul on like what do you call that, like a bus stop. It's William Hoakley, which is a prosecutor. I think he was a prosecutor originally. That was with Saul in the legal or at the judge house. But anyways, I thought that was just a funny thing. She brings him up really fast, but he finds out.
I want to point out, by the way, I don't think that this was just for the audience. I'll elaborate in a minute. I don't think this was just for the audience.
No, obviously it was for him, but I think it was a clever way to inform us.
Yeah,
it's like to do two things, I guess, or multiple things. But we find out that all Saul's assets, or like money in his hidden areas, have been frozen, or basically the FBI has it
seized or discovered or whatever.
And he's frustrated because, well, that's his money. He kind of almost, I feel like, prides himself on success, his money, and all that stuff. And it just he lost it. You know. But one important thing is Francesca says that Kim called and was seeing how she was and how he was doing. Basically, make sure that he was alive. And that obviously planted a seed because he wanted to talk to Kim. Then we get another scene of him calling Kim. But I thought they did like a clever way of doing this because we don't hear the conversation. You get this out of the payphone point of view with lots of cars, like trucks flying by. And you were like, wait, what? And at the end, he was like frustrated. He was like really pissed off. He kicks like the window in at the payphone. So it was interesting. I thought that was a clever way of making us curious. What the heck just happened? I don't know if you want to go back to that other scene with Francesca about it.
Not specifically, but what I want to point out was that it's all kind of intertwined, I guess. That from an interview with Tom Schnauz. He was the director of this episode, and I think he's written and directed more episodes than anyone else other than Vince and Peter, the actual creators. He's like, if you're gonna like talk about the showrunners, he's probably number three or four of like definitely top 5 of like the people who are the showrunners.
Yeah.
And he said that they had just had that whole phone conversation with Francesca. And they didn't want to like draw that out longer with the phone call with Kim, just from like a structural standpoint of like how they're presenting that it was just too long. It was too long of a show to just have phone conversations going on. And you could even tell the actual phone conversation they had was a little bit longer. It was only like a 30 seconds that we saw, and I think they were clearly just. We see that a phone call happened, but they're just not going to show us what it was.
Yep.
And they are going to show us that it frustrated him. And there was even a little bit of a mystery as to whether he got Kim on the phone even. Like a lot of people thought that maybe he found out she was dead or whoever, she was working for wouldn't let him talk to her or something like that.
Yeah.
I was pretty confident. It's easy for me to say this after the fact, but I definitely wrote up a million posts on Reddit to this effect. I was pretty confident that he had talked to her. The scene reminded me. Yeah, the scene reminded me of a moment back in season 4, episode 9. It's in episode 10 is a pretty memorable moment when Saul gets his license back. Remember, he's lost his license because of breaking into Chuck's house to get the tape because Chuck recorded him. That whole thing with the chicanery, part of the fallout from that. Jimmy lost his license. But I think it was for a year, and then after a year, he goes to see a panel to see if he can get it back, and so he does get it back, but I had forgotten that he doesn't get it back on the first try. On the first try, he goes into the panel, and they ask him a bunch of questions, and he's got good answers, he presents himself well, they seem to appreciate his attitude and his understanding of the law, and all the questions, it all goes really well. But at the end, one of the people on the panel asks him, is there someone in your life who you would give credit to your course, to your world, to your appreciation of the law, whatever? And he thinks for a minute, and you're kind of expecting him to say Chuck, right?
Yeah.
But he's like, American Samoa, go land crabs, like the college that he went to, And the person answering the question is like, oh. She's like, oh, okay. All right. Thank you very much. And Jimmy leaves thinking he did a great job. But then he finds out they're not going to reinstate his license. He flips out. He like yells at someone in the court there like, you can't do this to me. He calls Kim. He speeds off. She quits work to go talk. She didn't quit her job, but leaves the office to go meet with him and talk this out. And she just can't understand. What else am I supposed to do? I did everything I'm supposed to. I thought for sure the interview went well. And she's like, well, what did you say when I asked you about Chuck? And he's like, Chuck? I didn't say anything about Chuck. She's like, well, why? She's like, why would I? And he flips out. It's really mad at her. It was like a really awkward, tough moment. He got really mad, and they both kind of laid into each other. And you kind of realize what's happening is that Jimmy just isn't processing Chuck. He just isn't taking responsibility or facing his role in it or dealing with the guilt or the sadness, or he's not self-reflecting, and he's kind of taking it out on Kim. And what I assumed was when he called Kim up after they haven't talked for years probably, and she's probably in the course of the conversation says something like, how did you get mixed up with Walt? Is it true what you really did? This is why I had to leave you in the first place. Like, he has this fantasy that she's gonna be like, hey, how's it going? Let's go get coffee. Like, he's looking for some sort of acceptance or understanding or some connection to the past.
Yeah.
But instead, we learn exactly what she says, but I'm supposing that she's sort of calling him out on responsibility for his actions,
Yep.
kind of like she did with Chuck. And he flipped out then. Well, he's flipping out now. And it's even worse now because, and this is what I was going to say about Francesca. This is what I was saying, like the sort of rundown of the different people he
Yeah.
was asking about isn't just to let us know as an audience. It's what we're seeing here is that every connection Jimmy had to the past is gone. Every person he
Yep.
knew or worked with, or that maybe had some respect for him, or maybe made someone he might could call up and connect with on some level, like, nope, they're dead, they're in jail, they're missing. Well, what about my money? What about the offshore company? What about the laser tag business? Nope, 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 nope. Everything's gone. You have nothing from your history. You have no legacy. All your work was for nothing.
Mm-hmm.
And so with this, he then calls up Kim as one last hope, and she's like, you need to turn yourself in. Of course he flips out. And
Yep.
not just in that moment, he goes back to Jeff. He's like, all right, get your stuff together. We're going to get some drugs and scam some people.
Yep.
He doubled, just like when Kim left him that first time in Fun and Games.
Yep.
And he suddenly fills his mind and his life with things to distract himself from the mistakes of his past. He does the same thing again. He just is trying to consume his energy and his thoughts and the hours of his day with these scams he sets up with Jeff and Buddy.
Mm-hmm. No, you're right. I was thinking that. So yeah, I guess we'll get into the scams or this next con he does. But before that, he does, when he goes to the house, to meet Jeff, he runs into Marianne, who got a new laptop. And it's really funny because like Jeff was like, oh god, he's going to be mad at me because I just spent a whole pack of money, which I didn't, on this laptop. But one, this laptop's important. It's also funny, like during that time period, is what is this? 2008, 2010. I'm not quite sure.
I think we're exactly in 2010. I didn't bring this up, but you can date this very well from the when Jimmy's buddying up to the security guards.
Yeah.
And Frank is clearly into football.
Yeah.
And at first Jimmy's like, oh yeah, what a game. Oh man, I couldn't believe that at halftime. Just the most generic conversational stuff you can say. But then he's like, can you believe Martinez got 378 yards? He's like,
he does like research.
Researches the details. Well, those were real details from real football games that happened in fall of 2010.
That's good to know.
We know, and we also know that the phone call with Kim was November 12th. So that's just a few weeks later. It all adds up. Eventually, Jimmy, when he does call, when we hear the other side of the conversation with Kim, he says it's been 6 years since we've seen each other.
Yep.
We saw the date on the divorce documents was 2004. So anyway, you can piece together the timeline very, very specifically.
That's awesome.
Anyway,
but
we're in 2010.
But she's, for one, she is like discovering internet. Seems like internet's pretty new. I actually remember internet being like it's not like it is now. Like it's weird thinking about like 15 years ago. It was pretty rare that people had internet. Certain big channels like YouTube weren't even around, I don't think. But YouTube, they show like YouTube was around. She's like could like find kittens or anything on obviously YouTube. And she was using dial-up. She had like take out of the phone outlet to put into her laptop, which I remember that. So that was like a neat attention to detail that I almost forgot that you had to do back then. But anyways, so in Jeff's mind, he's like, oh man, Saul's going to be mad at me because I spent all this money on my mom, and that's not even on his radar. That's not on Gene's radar. He wants to make another scam. He needs Jeff's help. He needs to know his schedule with the taxi job, and they come up with this elaborate scam of like meeting people at a bar, getting them super drunk, giving them a drug while they're in the taxi, and then they pass out. They go into the house and they break in and get important documents like their driver's license, their credit cards, their I don't even know what those forms were. Important documents like I don't know if those were stocks or not.
Tax information, bank account numbers, passwords, anything they can get to be able to access someone's finances.
Yeah. And you see this, this was becoming like a norm, like they did to like, I don't know, 20-ish people. Like there was another montage of this, of how many people they're doing it to. And they end it with the cancer patient. There was like a guy who they're going to scam who had cancer. And they go to his house, or they set up everything as if they were, yes. Sorry.
I just want to point out, it's not just that he was a cancer patient, which that was sort of like the clincher, but they were trying to make it clear that this guy stood out from the other people that they
That is true. He was nicer. He didn't like the first guy we, I guess, met. He was like into betting a lot, basically throwing away his money. He seemed kind of like a not jerk, I guess. Or
he was pushy. He was arrogant. He was all these negative qualities. Like we almost feel like he deserves to get scammed.
Yeah,
and he's, I think, the most extreme.
Yes.
We get a little bit less detail of the future guys that they're scamming. It becomes, they go into, an extended scene with this guy where the others are kind of swirled up in a montage.
Yeah.
But then they slow it back down again for the cancer patient. And this guy's the polar opposite. He's like, no, you go ahead and take the cab. Yeah, man, those Enron guys suck. I hate how rich people abuse the system. And he says things that people can appreciate and relate to.
Yep.
And he's kind. And then also we find out he has cancer. And it's like they're giving both us as an audience and Jimmy, the character, one reason after another to not go after this guy.
Yes.
Kind of like we were in the flashback cuts
of
Saul
Walter.
was given one reason for another to not go after Walt.
Yeah, who had cancer too.
Anyway, who had cancer, and he goes after this guy anyway, even though he has cancer. And by the way, I realized that the moment when Buddy doesn't want to do it, and when he's like, this guy's got cancer, my dad has cancer, I don't feel good with it. I'm not scamming this guy, and Jimmy was like, what are you talking about? You don't decide. You don't want to do it. Do you know how much trouble I go through and how much effort it is to find the perfect mark? I got to find someone. I got to weed through all these saps at the bar. I got to find someone who's like at home, alone, that doesn't have a family.
Yeah.
That has money.
I never even thought about like the family thing. Like that just didn't cross my mind. It makes complete sense, but it didn't.
You know who he's describing there?
Him.
Himself.
Yeah, himself.
Yep.
Yeah.
He's the perfect mark. And it's even more obvious when that first guy that they go after is kind of like a scammer himself. He's like tricking Jimmy with these bets and stuff.
Yeah, actually, I got vibes of Jimmy with that guy, which was really funny. Or his like friend, his friend from the past, Marco. I think his name.
Marco.
I got vibes of that with that first guy.
And I think they're really trying to drive home that Jimmy's going after himself. Both there's a certain irony to the scams he's pulling on, the type of person he's looking for is someone that's like himself, but also in a way he's kind of going after himself like he's being self-destructive, like he's given up. Right? In the past, on some level, he felt like he needed to impress Chuck or Kim, but now, screw it. I have nothing to live for. I don't care. I don't have any past. I don't know anyone cares about me. I don't have anything to lose. I might as well. I'm just going to do what I want. And I think this is also sort of an indication that he doesn't really need this money, right? That's even one of the arguments the Buddy tries to make, right? One more reason to not go after this cancer guy is like, look, we're doing good. We already made it. We see Saul stuffing all this cash under the sink. We already know he's got a bunch of diamonds. He's not doing it because he's greedy. He's doing it for his ego. The money he makes off these is sort of like scorekeeping. It's like proof that he beat somebody. It's proof that he outsmarted someone.
Which is funny because, this is like going into Walter. Walter was doing it for the money at first. So in the long run, it was about ego.
Yeah.
But and
Yeah.
it was like frustrating watching
Yeah.
Walter destroy himself, destroy everything
Yeah.
around
And
him, and you're
destroy
like,
other people around
and
him.
that's why
Yeah.
I personally don't like Walter, and it's not because of the earlier stuff; it was because of what he became. Um,
Yeah. And it was like a big moment in the show toward the end when he starts to tell Skylar on the phone. It's like, I got to tell you, the reason I did this. And she cuts him off. She's like, if I hear you say one more time you did this for your family, and he's like, I did it for myself.
yep,
I did it
yeah, I
because I
remember
was
that.
good at it and I really felt alive.
Mm-hmm.
And that's exactly what's going on with Jimmy.
Yep.
He's not doing this for money. He's not doing this out of greed. He's not doing it because he needs to. He's doing it just because it gives him an adrenaline rush. It makes him
Mm-hmm.
feel important. It makes him he's validating himself. Or, all kinds of I don't know psychological ways you could try to
Yeah.
pin this down. But one or the other, he's getting more and more reckless and arrogant about it. Right?
Yeah. And let's see, was it? Okay, so it ends with him breaking into the house. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's right. Which is funny too, because like kind of like how you said that, like there was reasons why he shouldn't have done it. They're buddy, in order to get into the house, they have like this tape that they put in between the frame and the door. And he's like, I took that off. How the hell are you going to get in there? And he's like, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
I'm standing in the back of my mind, I'm like, what's he going to do? He freaking breaks in. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's like extreme,
This is skipping ahead a little bit, but
Yeah.
as long as you bring it up, I think that once he broke in, I think that's why he stole the watches, because he realized he needs to make it look like a standard burglary, right? If someone broke in and then 3 months later the guy's bank account's wiped out, he can figure out, oh, that time someone broke in. But if someone breaks in and the watches are gone, oh, someone broke in and stole the watches, then it won't get connected with the identity theft down the road.
I never caught that. That's interesting.
Yeah, I thought he was just being reckless and
I thought-
greedy, but
that's what I thought
he's
too.
actually still like playing the scam. I mean, he's being reckless and greedy in other ways, and by greedy, I don't necessarily mean trying to get more money. He's greedy and he's trying to get away with more than he should.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
the way I think
I
of it.
thought that too. But it makes a lot of sense that you say that it needed to feel like a burglary versus. That's interesting. Which I mean, I think we're done with Breaking Bad episode. Episode 11, Breaking Bad. Oh, what happened? Hold on a second. Did we lose Sean again? Yeah, na, 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 na. Uh-oh, I think we lost Sean again. Give me 1 sec. Oh no. We may just take a small little break since Sean got disconnected again. I think his power went out again or something over there. So we'll take a 5. To give him a moment to come. Wait, is he coming?
Are you there?
Oh wait, no, but I guess not. Yes, I'm here. Give me a sec.
Okay, sorry.
Thought we lost you. I was gonna say let's take a 5, but you're back.
All right, we're at sort of a crossroad here. I think I'm kind of pushing it to if we go another hour. I think I can go another hour.
Yeah.
I think we can cover this last episode in an hour.
I think so. We've been doing fairly good. Like that was like 45 minutes for that last one. So the pace we're going, we're doing good. So yeah, I was gonna say that was it for Breaking Bad episode 11. So episode 12, Waterworks, which actually I'm trying to figure out what that title still means, but maybe you do. But
it means a lot of things.
Yeah, I was wondering if there's actually what does the term Waterworks means then? So it sounds like you know what that.
So often Waterworks is used to refer to someone crying. That's a lot of times what it means, which that happened in this episode. Waterworks a lot of times is referred to like the infrastructure surrounding water distribution, like water coming into your house.
Thought of that
on the Monopoly board, Waterworks. You like pay the Waterworks for
which
it's like a
Kim
bill
works
you have to
for
pay.
sprinklers. Which I didn't
Works
catch
for
that
a
at
sprinkler
first.
company.
Yeah.
Also, by the way, on the Monopoly board, Waterworks is one before go to jail.
Oh.
So about to go to jail. Waterworks could be right before that.
Ooh. I like that.
Anyway, you could see how it fits in a
Yeah.
lot of different ways, right?
Yes.
There was I don't know if it necessarily meant this to be part of it, but remember how it was pouring down rain at one point?
Yep. Yep.
Uh,
Which we'll get into with Kim and Jesse. Um. So so it opens up with Saul throwing a small ball at his in his office, like at the I guess the Constitution, whatever he has on his wall. Um, and Francesca's like, "You have a lot of people out here. You need to take care of them." And he like blows them off. He's acting like irresponsible, an ass, like a lot of Um, and I realized, obviously, at the end of this, it opens up a file and it's divorce papers. I'm like, of course, he's trying to ignore this. He doesn't want
yeah.
to deal with this because he, as we know, Saul just doesn't deal with, or Jimmy doesn't deal with situations like this really well. He
To
tries.
be fair,
Huh?
it's not like most people deal with divorce well, and he didn't.
No,
Right? This is tough
no.
for everyone,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah, yeah. But he takes it to a extreme sometimes. Like, obviously, this is breaking. He dives into Walter's problems almost. Um, but it cuts into that. We have a scene later where so I guess at first this episode's about Kim really. Like most of the episode I feel like revolves around Kim and almost may even be a closure to Kim. I was wondering, but we see like later on in this episode this scene continue and Kim is signing the divorce papers with and how Jimmy is acting. He's just very standoffish, like trying to almost ignore the problem. And it's really sad. Like I felt like bad for Kim. I was annoyed with Jimmy. Made sense what was going on, but it still didn't make it any less annoying. Like I was like disappointed, I guess, or
Like when you it's part of why this show is so beautiful because
yeah,
on one hand, Jeremy's kind of being a jerk there. But on the other hand, we kind of see through it. We kind of know he's actually struggling on the inside, and
yeah,
this is just his
yeah,
way to deal with it, and it's a crappy way to deal with it. But on the surface, I want to feel sorry for Kim. I want to feel sorry for Jimmy also.
yep, yep,
Like it's not as easy to feel sorry for him because he's acting like a jerk. But when you realize why he's acting that way, and that he does still love her, and that he wishes he could keep her somehow, and all the other things that are mixed up, it's just the whole thing is just really tragic.
yes,
I think that's part of what's going on too with him out, bouncing the ball when everyone's waiting outside. Part of it is he's putting off dealing with this divorce. Part of it, he's probably like psyching himself up. He's probably like deciding how he's going to deal with this.
mm-hmm.
Probably like processing some emotion there. Probably building up uh, uh, some defenses, if you will, to keep from breaking down emotionally in front of Kim.
Yeah, that's true.
He probably understands that he's about to act like a jerk towards Kim, and he's got to, I don't know, decide if that's okay with him and prepare himself for different things she might say or how I don't know. I just love how much is going on in that moment while he's bouncing that ball. You
Yeah,
know what I mean? There's and it's the type of thing too that really frustrates me when people complain that this show is boring or that. To be fair, sometimes shows are boring or movies are boring. Sometimes they're poorly paced or about a topic you don't care about or something like that. But a lot of times, a slow pace, a moment where, quote, nothing is happening like this, really is intended to make you think about what the character is thinking about. It's made
mm-hmm.
to get you to empathize with them or to get you to think about why are they even showing this to us, especially when it goes on for a moment longer than you would expect or several moments. I can't help but gears in my brain start turning like what's going on here, why are they showing us, what is Jimmy thinking, and then by the time that all starts to click in my head, they're like, here's the divorce papers, like, oh yeah, of course, you know what I mean, like, and when you rewatch it, it's even more moving and meaningful, and these are some of my favorite moments of the show.
um so I'm just going to continue on with the scene, at least like where this goes. Right after the scene, like she gets up Oh, they talk about the Sandpiper case, which I thought was interesting, and how she didn't want anything to do with it. She didn't want the money. Um,
Yeah, that was an assumption I made. She can't even sleep in the same apartment where Howard was killed.
exactly,
She's gonna take his money, and anything she buys with it, she'll be driving around in a car thinking about how Howard died. You know what I mean? Like,
exactly.
there's no way she's taking that money.
Yeah, yeah, it makes complete sense. Um, but she gets up. She talks to Francesca, and a guy walks in, which I thought this was like a neat Easter egg. His name is Emilio. He was the first guy that, well, it's Jesse's partner, but it's the first guy that was killed off in Breaking Bad, or at least one of the two, I guess you could argue. No, it was first because the other guy didn't die until a little bit after. Um, but I thought that was just so cool that they brought him in, and this is the first time that Jesse and Emilio get introduced to Saul. Like I said, it was just a nice little Easter egg. What's up? Oh, and Kim, yes, yeah,
and this is also another moment that helps us line up all the timelines too.
Yes,
right?
yes.
We know this is 2004. We know that Jesse and Emilio were partners before he met Walt. Like,
exactly.
It all syncs up. So
yes, and she goes outside, and of course she's going to run into Jesse. Like, it makes complete sense. Like it's a shocker because they like hide him behind a pillar, and then they pan over, and you see him. And he smokes. She smokes. So of course he asks, he's like, "Can I, borrow a smoke?" And they have a conversation. And the point of this scene was Jesse wanted to know if Saul was legit. Was he a real person? Not like how Kim answered it, because he's like, he was, or when I knew him, he was.
Yeah.
She doesn't know how he is now. When it came down to it,
she doesn't know him anymore.
Exactly. I thought that was a neat way of answering a clever dialogue. But also, it was interesting to see Jesse and Kim in a scene together. Tying the two worlds.
So think about it too. This is Kim moving away from Saul. This is Jesse getting mixed up with Saul.
Yep.
Sort of like the end of one arc and the beginning of the next. And by the way, this is another thing. I can't even take credit for this. Someone posted this on Reddit, but if you look at the imagery, that we see that shot from a couple of different angles.
Yeah.
But basically, behind them, it's kind of colorful. We've got like the red and blue and yellow, the open sign. The decor of Saul's office and the neon lights and everything behind them. But and even Jesse himself is also dressed in yellow, which, by the way, I've been wondering a little bit in these Breaking Bad, Better Call Saul kind of flashback, kind of scenes. Which color scheme are they using?
Because he did wear yellow in Breaking Bad a lot. So
and in Breaking Bad, yellow, they weren't as consistent in Breaking Bad, but one way they tended to use yellow was in association with meth trade.
Yep.
And so that adds up, I guess, assuming Jesse's mixed up in it at this point. But in Better Call Saul, they use yellow to represent
uncertainty,
conflict, and transition, and uncertainty, and that's definitely what Jesse's going through.
Yeah.
Kim was wearing a pink shirt, and I think red they use to represent criminality. Pink is kind of like a lighter version of red. I think that they usually use pink when someone is sort of crime adjacent. Someone's like, when Kim was there at Gus's house with Mike and all those guys criminals, she was wearing pink at that moment. Pink is. I think one time, the little girl, Mike's granddaughter, was when she was around Mike, she's wearing pink because Mike is a criminal, but she's adjacent. Anyway, I think pink is someone who's like on the outskirts of criminality, which Kim is in this moment, right? Anyway, point is, when I show that scene from the side and you see Kim kind of in the foreground and Jesse in the background and the kind of lighting of Saul's office to the left and to the right, they're looking out. The reason Kim hasn't left yet is because it's just pouring down torrential rain.
Yeah.
And the effect of all that rain out in the parking lot is that it looks kind of, I don't know what word I want to use here, non-chromatic. It's almost like it's black and white.
Yes.
Go look at that scene again.
I know you're talking about.
Colorful on Saul's side, and she steps out into the rain, and it's not specifically black and white, but it kind of appears black and white, drained of color.
That's really.
and she leaves Saul and that colorful life behind and goes down to Florida to the waterworks where there's hurricanes and rain all the time, and her life that has no color. So
no, yeah, it's just true. Funny. So I'm trying to think if that wraps up everything in the Breaking Bad era. Basically, like I said, this episode focuses a lot on Kim. The very first scene after the intro. Oh yeah, the intro, like when he like showed like the camera or the the tape dissolving. It felt like, like where it shows like Better Call Saul.
mm-hmm.
You see Kim. I don't know if you know that.
Yeah, it was a quick image, and I
yes.
tried to like
I had to pause it like so.
TV. I couldn't get it quite in the right moment, but yeah,
it's her at the airport because you see that shot later on in the episode, which I thought that was just really clever, interesting.
Someone else also made a post. There was a moment, season 2 of Breaking Bad. At some point in Breaking Bad,
huh?
When Skylar was getting frustrated with Walt because he's behaving weird. She
yep.
doesn't. I think it's before she knew the full. She didn't know all the crime he was getting mixed up in. I think he had lied to her and told her he was going to visit his mom. And later on, she figures out that he hadn't gone to visit his mom. That's when she pieced together that he is mixed up in his crime. But anyway, there's a shot of him at the airport, and it's just the exact same shot as Kim. It's like they just recreated that shot.
I think I know what you're talking about. Yes. But you see Kim. I honestly didn't recognize her at first when they show like a potato being cut, and it pans up from her stomach, all the way to her face, and you just see this. It's black and white. See this woman who has like long, I guess, black hair. I'm not quite sure. And then I was like, oh wait, that's Kim. Like I said, it took me a moment to process that was her, but it was future her or whatever you want to call it, Gene's storyline her. And
the combination of being in black and white, and her hair being a different color and a different style.
Yep.
And also maybe just out of context, sometimes it's hard to recognize someone. So.
Yep. But we focus on like her. I thought she was married, by the way. I don't think she was married to this guy, but
definitely not,
because she didn't have a wedding ring. I realized.
I think they were trying to make it clear they wouldn't. The first shot we see is of her hands.
Yeah.
And she doesn't have a ring on. Then we see they don't make it as clear for him, but he doesn't have a ring on either. And if you remember, at the end of the night, he leaves. He gets in his car and goes home, and she brushes her teeth and goes to bed by herself.
Oh,
they definitely were married.
Interesting. I didn't catch that part, but yeah, that makes sense. But we get to see the everyday life of Kim, after she's been away from Saul for a long time, and she kind of lives kind of like Saul when he's at the Cinnabon, a boring life. She works at like this sprinkler place, like it's sad because like she's such a strong, educated woman who could defend people, and she's just doing this. And maybe it's not bad. Maybe she doesn't seem unhappy, but she also doesn't seem what's the word?
Yeah,
like
she's
herself.
Not happy. Her
yeah,
life
yeah.
is not being fulfilled. She's not herself,
exactly.
Yeah.
But
if you watch closely,
yeah.
If you watch it and with this idea in mind, she will not make a decision.
Yes, I was about to say that, and I thought that was funny because the first time the guy walks in and he has groceries or whatever he had, he asked her, what was it? They didn't have mayonnaise, so he's like, they had Miracle Cream or Miracle Whip, I guess it's called, and she's like, oh, okay. He's like, what do you think about it? And she's like, I don't know. What do you think about it? He's like, oh, yeah, I think we'll give it a shot. And it's like, she's like being like, I don't say sarcastic.
Ask her about something he's watching on TV. She's like, oh, I don't know, maybe. Like,
yeah.
She just won't give an answer. And when at work, they're like, what do you think, strawberry or vanilla? Oh, they're both so good.
Yeah.
She just won't make a decision.
I was like laughing every time like she would say stuff like that. I'm like, I was laughing, but also like kind of sad. I'm like,
exactly. Yeah.
And this guy is like so plain and like, I don't say stupid, but like he's nothing like Saul, I guess is the best way to put it. He's like the opposite of him. And like she's just going through life, kind of like I was saying, how Jimmy's just going through life in the Cinnabon, but she's what?
I think that, this could for some people be a fine life, right?
Yeah,
Like, I
yeah,
don't
yeah.
think that this, like, she has a boyfriend. She seems to have a job and a home and a car. Like, in a lot of ways, she has things that you would be happy or satisfied with. But I think they drive home that she is not satisfied with
Hmm.
this, right? Like, we know that she had this ambition of helping out people with the law. People who couldn't afford good lawyers. She wanted to get them good defense in law anyway,
Yep,
right? And
yep.
she's not fulfilling that dream. And we knew
No.
she had the capability of it, so it's sad to see her not doing it. And we know she has a sharp mind also. And what is she doing? I don't know if you noticed, but she's doing a puzzle with nothing on it. Which I've seen that.
Oh
I've seen puzzles that are
no.
just like blank puzzles because they're really hard, right?
I didn't
It's
catch
you
that. That's
really have
funny.
to.
Because
Yeah,
it
the
was in
puzzles
black
were
and white,
just
so I
like
guess that
one
was like
puzzle.
harder to notice, I guess.
It
But
is, yeah, it was a little harder to notice, but that is a thing that exists. They're like the most difficult puzzles because you don't have any clues or images or colors to
yeah,
match up. You really have to work your brain, I don't know, your spatial orientation and memory and everything to find all the pieces that hook up. And
it's
so
interesting.
she's clearly trying to find some way to you know, keep her mind busy,
Hmm.
but it is not through making decisions. It is
Nah.
not through her work. It is not through her relationship,
Um.
or her cooking, or
Yeah, yeah,
or,
yeah.
or anything else. Yeah, anything that she. I wonder if she's just scared of hurting someone. She's scared that some decision she makes might hurt someone in some
Uh,
way, so she's just not going to make any decisions.
I guess that's fair. But she's at the office, and their secretary's like, Victor called, or Vic, something. And she like gets up, closes her current, and she knows, we know, it's Jimmy. Uh, and how she reacts to it is so interesting because she wants to pick it up, but she doesn't. Like she's like terrified, of like talking to
Yeah,
him, of like
yeah.
she's like almost been like hiding herself away from like these feelings possibly. It was like sad. And like she obviously picks it up
Like,
and
just imagine, just for a moment, put yourself in her shoes. She's
oh
just
yeah.
going through her routine. She's thinking about her sandwich for the day and her plans with a boyfriend on Friday. And all of a sudden, this person that she used to be married to, she witnessed a murder with, she knows from the news he was mixed up in crime cartels. Like,
Yeah.
there's just this flood of emotions. It's just
Also,
overwhelming. Even if you had time to think about it, it wouldn't
yeah.
be an overwhelming thing to process. But she's got to do it like in a couple seconds. She's about to pick up the phone and
Yeah.
talk to him. Like, it's
But also I could see her like wanting missing it. Like, yeah, she went
on
through
some level for sure.
yeah,
Yeah.
because like I mean she as we were seeing, she like lives this like boring life almost, and like he was exciting to her. He brought passion to her life almost. So she's like conflicted almost, I could see, you know. Um but yeah, so she like picks it up and you get like this, hard scene. Um like they like he asked if like she's like how she's doing, I think, right? At first, like he's trying to make it almost like an everyday like conversation.
Yeah.
She's like, "Why are
Yeah.
you
What's
calling
going
me?"
on? Let's catch up.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And she's like frustrated. She's like, "Why are you calling me?" And they like start talking about like like people who've died. Like Mike brought up in it, and Howard and all that, like those names. And she's like, "You just need to turn yourself in," which is kind of similar, I think, to like what you kind of predicted. Uh, if like we had to predict, you kind of it would said you would have predicted that this is probably what she said.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it makes him mad,
It's
'cause
basically, she's forcing him to look at himself and take some responsibility for what he's done.
yeah, because
Lots of details of how that could play out, but that's basically what the biggest thing that she's doing, which would have been hard for anyone to predict, is she's just not really saying anything, right?
yeah,
And that's it's almost, he's really made himself mad as much as her, right? Like he got himself worked up just trying to get something out of her,
yes, right. Because
He's
he was
like,
like, yell at me, be pissed off at me, call me an asshole or whatever,
yeah, just say something. Let me know you're alive. Let me know you have a pulse or whatever he
Yeah.
said. Yeah. And when she finally, she's like, "You want me to say something? You should turn yourself in." Yeah.
Yeah, and like she hangs up with, "I'm glad you're all right," or "I'm glad you're alive," or something like that, like
Yeah.
something almost like
Yeah.
positive. Actually, I think the first time I watched it, I got like tearied up or something like that. I don't
Yeah,
know why.
it
Like
was
it hit
tough.
me. Yeah, and of course he's going to explode on this. Like on the other end, this is why he
Yeah,
kicked in the glass.
yeah.
The payphone. Um, and he does.
It's another example of both example both of how well the show gets us to understand and care about these characters, and how well they can emote even without saying anything, or how much we can understand about what's going on in our minds based on her actions. Like Kim hardly said anything at all, but we know the turmoil going on inside of her. That's
Mm,
really good writing and acting to get that. And it's also an interesting, I don't know, parallel. Is well written, and that people don't deal with things in the same way, but both in general and in this moment, we see Kim and Jimmy dealing with, I don't know, their relationship and the mistakes of their past in very different ways.
yeah,
Jimmy like dives head in to work and I don't know, a lack of morality, where Kim blocks everything out, doesn't give herself a chance to do anything immoral, and lives this bland life, right? Like
yeah,
he's getting more gaudy and I don't know what word to use, energetic, colorful than ever, and she's less so than ever. And in this phone call, he's getting more upset and emotional and talkative, where she's just cold and silent. But they're both dealing with very similar internal emotions, just
yeah,
playing out in very different ways.
yes. And it makes sense. Like the next scene, what happens to her? Kim goes to Albuquerque, and she.
But real quick, I want to
Oh
point
yeah.
out the very next scene. Do you remember what happens?
Give me a second. Let's see.
I don't even know if it's
Put
fair to call it
on
the next scene, the next
and
shot.
there. Oh yes. So someone comes in, and they kind of talked about this earlier, but there's a birthday going on,
Yeah.
and so they're like, time to have time to sing the birthday song. And what does Kim do? Puts on a smile and goes out there and pretends to
It,
be the person that she needs to be.
there's even a little bit more to it than that. Let me point out. We know where this is going, but I think it was set up right in this moment.
Yeah.
I've kind of like come across this thought process a couple times talking to you in these streams,
Uh,
but it's become more clear in my mind. This idea that when we watch an episode,
yeah.
and that we get all these pieces from it and think about where the next episode is going to go, right? And we can even like go back to like through the seasons, like some, at the end of a season you think what's going to happen next season, or when we're thinking about what's going to happen for the rest of the season, we're drawing on character development and plot lines and the use of color and all this stuff throughout the course of the show to kind of think about where it's going next. But I think you can do that scene to scene as well.
Yep.
Usually, when you watch an episode, you just watch the whole episode. You don't stop each scene and wait for a week and think and analyze it all, right? You just watch the whole episode. But I think if you did, you would be able to predict where they're going with the next scenes. And one of the first times I was thinking about this was with um, when Lalo showed up and killed Howard. I think if that episode had ended before Lalo showed up, or even before Howard showed up, if it had just ended and we had a week to think about that, I think we would have realized that they were both going to show up,
Yeah.
or maybe realize they were both going to show up might be too strong. Many people would have started to speculate it's possible that they're both going to show up and Howard's going to get killed.
Yeah.
We were already thinking that Howard might get killed. They had already sort of planted those seeds, right? We were
Yep.
already thinking about that. And we saw Lalo down in the drain system or whatever.
Yeah.
We saw him when he saw that cockroach, kind of like a light went off,
Yep.
right? And we knew that he had called Jimmy a cockroach. We knew that he met Jimmy through Nacho, and Nacho turned out to betray him, right? We could piece together that's what Lalo's next move is going to be, is to go to Jimmy, right?
Yeah.
That's something that we could piece together. Now, it's hard to piece it together in that moment because you just watch the next scene and you watch the next scene and suddenly Lalo's there. But if this episode had ended right there, I think we would have pieced together that's what was going to happen. And same thing with Howard. We what do we think Howard's going to do after that crazy day when he gets drugged and embarrassed in front of the case and they settle and he knows Jimmy's behind it all? Do we think Howard's just going to like go home and watch the local news? Is he going to go home and talk to his business partner, Chuck? Oh, Chuck's gone. He's going to talk to Cliff. Oh, Cliff thinks he's mixed up. He's going to talk to his wife. Oh, him and his wife. What is he going to do? He's probably going to go confront Jimmy and Kim. I
Yep.
think if the episode had ended before Howard showed up, it would have been something they planted all the seeds. They gave us all the information. The momentum was heading in that direction. I don't think it was really a twist, and it would have seemed less like a twist if we had more time to think about it.
Yeah.
Same thing here. Kim just found out. We see that Kim felt bad enough about what they did to leave Jimmy, to get away from him, to get divorced, to move to a new state, to start a new life.
Yep.
She's sort of suppressing these guilts that she has, and kind of like Jimmy, maybe hasn't fully dealt with them. But she also probably has some fear mixed up. Jimmy got deeper into this criminal world and developed relationships with these people. Kim just saw the surface of it and got away, but she's probably scared. It's legitimate for her to be scared of Mike Ehrmantraut, right?
Yeah.
But Jimmy just told her, Mike's dead, Lalo's dead, Gus is dead, they're all dead. There's nothing to worry about anymore. And to him, her suggesting that he turn himself in is preposterous. Like, why would I turn myself in? No one's gonna catch me. Those stupid feds couldn't find their own butts, or whatever he says. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, Gus is dead, Mike's dead. I got nothing to worry about. But she took that as there's no reason for me to not turn myself in. I did something wrong.
Mhm.
I feel bad about it. Cheryl is suffering, and Howard's legacy is ruined. There's no longer a danger to my life by turning myself in. I'm
Yeah,
not putting
true.
Jimmy or anyone else in danger by turning myself in. And when that woman came in, what she said to Kim was, "Time to sing." And that sing
Yeah.
like a canary, that can
Yeah,
tell
yeah.
the truth, sing like, I think they were telling us right there in that moment that she's gonna go turn herself in and confess.
Right.
But if the episode had ended right there, I think we would be talking about that right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, you know, I think that they, scene to scene, I think they set things up, and through the episode we just see the next scene, and so we don't get a chance to speculate on it. But I think if the episode ended right there, our episode covering it would be talking about, I think Kim's gonna go turn herself in next week, you know.
Yeah. No, you're right. You're right. So, yeah, she does it. She just goes to Albuquerque and writes a report or whatever you call that thing, and turns herself in. Affidavit, you said?
Yep.
Yeah.
Affidavit. Yeah.
And then right after that, after she goes to the courthouse, she goes right to Cheryl. Which I was happy. I you know, like, because, you know, like, well, Howard, like you said, lost his legacy. Like, he got screwed, and she's been suffering, and she's like, you know, this is what really happened. Howard wasn't at fault, and answered every question that she could answer to Cheryl, that Cheryl wanted to give, you know, ask Kim. But yeah, it was like a sad scene, you know, and it,
Yeah.
and I guess it's like the parallel to Saul and Kim. Kim's taking responsibility, and I'm almost like proud of her. Like, I'm like, it sucks, but she's doing the right thing.
It's really tough to do that. She might have been arrested and put in jail, right?
Exactly.
That's a legit possibility she was facing.
Yeah.
I think that I think she understood that was unlikely, but that she was willing to risk it anyway. It was
Exactly
enough to her.
Exactly. Yeah. And you have Saul, on the other hand, or Jimmy, just like doing the complete opposite. You know, not taking responsibility, being careless,
committing more crimes,
yeah,
hurting
exactly,
more people that don't deserve it. Yeah. And I think that's something that we see the showrunners doing, is that, and I'm not necessarily saying they're doing this for the sake of the audience.
Yeah.
But I believe that they intended for Howard to be a protagonist. I think they meant for him to be a good guy. And we've talked about this a little before.
Yep.
I can go on and on with my reasons, but one sort of dead giveaway is that they put him in blue all the time. And blue is a color they use for good guys and protagonists, people who are legal, legitimate, whatever. And he was always in blue the whole way, very consistently. And I think that's one clue among a million others that he was intended to be a good guy. But some of the things he did, you know, even as a good guy, maybe were mistakes or slightly mean or arguably irresponsible or whatever. But he never did anything evil. He was never a straight up antagonist.
Yeah.
Even though he was sort of presented that way. He was sort of presented like an antagonist to Jimmy at first, but that was sort of misdirect. We realized it was actually Chuck working through Howard that made him seem like an antagonist. Maybe on some level, Howard should have stood up to Chuck, but like, not standing up to your friend and partner isn't exactly evil. It's normal. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? For people to avoid
And on top of
confrontations.
that,
And
like Chuck was going through like this weird thing that Howard was trying to support as best as he could, and if he
yes,
got a
yeah.
little weird, he's like, I'm still there for you,
And
friend.
and down the road, Howard realized that he should have behaved differently and tried to apologize to Jimmy and make amends. Anyway, I don't mean to go on about it too much, but
Yeah,
my point is that some people were perceiving Howard as, if not a straight up good, a bad guy, but not the good guy that they meant him to be.
yeah,
And I think the show really toward the end was driving it home. No, Howard is good. Look at these good things. Look at, even if you thought he was bad, look how he's changed, how he's trying to be a good person. Uh, I think that similarly, people liked Kim. They did think of her as a good guy protagonist. By the way,
yeah,
she did wear blue all the time, and
yeah,
but eventually she starts doing this shady stuff with Jimmy. She starts wearing these warm colors, and now a lot of people who were kind of thinking of Kim as a hero are disappointed with these awful things that she's doing. And I think that this moment in the show is to redeem her, is to
exactly.
show no, she was a good person. She made mistakes, but she's trying to make amends. She regrets them. She realized it. She quit, and not just quit, but she's actually going back and trying to face it, right?
Yes,
And I think on some level they might be doing that with Jimmy too. I'm skipping forward a little bit, but I think we see that moment with Marion that he kind of snaps out of what he's doing, right? He's getting
mm,
really deep and dark into bad guy territory,
yeah,
right? But I don't think he goes all the way. I think that we're going to see he might have gone far enough. It's hard to be redeemable per se, but I don't think he's going to go down as a terrible villain, if that makes sense. But
yeah.
anyway, I went off more than I meant to, but I just want to point out that I do think the show, they did it with Nacho too. Nacho starts off as a bad guy,
Yeah,
a drug dealer with a red shirt and a red car that's trying to bully Saul around. And by the end, he's trying to save his dad, and they represent him with a blue rose. So
yep,
yeah, I think that they're taking us back and forth with these characters, and I think this episode was meant to redeem Kim. And I'm hoping this episode was rock bottom for Jimmy, and he gets redeemed next episode. We'll see.
yeah. Um, I like how they ended off the conversation with Cheryl with a quote. Let's see, what was it? Oh, why are you doing this? She never answered it. Well, let me rephrase it. We never heard
Yeah.
her answer it.
Yeah.
And I think it was just because she's trying to do the right thing.
I think we know the answer.
Yeah,
I
exactly.
don't think we needed to hear her say it.
Exactly. Um, but then she goes on to like a bus, and it's like one shot. I don't know. This goes on for at least a minute, maybe two. I'm not quite sure. And it's just Kim breaking down,
Yeah.
and it's just sad. It's interesting, like seeing like the people around her, because she's on a public bus, and she's trying to hold and from crying, and she just loses it eventually. You like see like some hand, like an older lady, possibly like try to comfort her. You know,
A little trivia. You know whose hand that was? Vince Gilligan's wife. That was her on the bus. Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah, that was a really, really great moment. I mean, you got to just think, just in general. I mean, everyone's a little bit different, but generally speaking, tears don't flow very easily. You know what I
No,
mean?
no.
And especially not in public, and especially not from Kim.
It's true.
Think how
Yeah.
torn up inside she must have had to be for Kim to break down crying on a public bus.
Mm-hmm.
She really had, and when you think about it, how many things she had to cry over. Like I probably
Yeah.
very much like Jimmy, she's been bottling this up for a long time and
Mm-hmm.
hasn't really dealt with it. She's on some level she's dealing with it, like her heart is still beating, she's walking through the world and eating food, like
Yeah.
she's surviving as a human, but she's not really dealing with these emotional issues appropriately. She may be
Mm-hmm.
dealing with them by making sure she doesn't hurt anyone else.
Yeah.
Jimmy is Jimmy is dealing with it almost by making sure he does hurt someone else. uh, but uh, but in this moment, I think she has to really deal with it. She made it through that day, or maybe a few days, or whatever, kind of mechanically, kind of coldly. Went to the police station, filed the affidavit, went to Cheryl, told her the truth of things. But at this point, she's kind of left alone with her thoughts for a moment, and she's probably realizing how bad she hurt Cheryl.
Mm.
She's realizing how much she missed out, like the potential of her life. Remember they had that little scene
Yeah.
when she went to the courthouse to file the affidavit when she saw that other young woman
Yep.
lawyer with the ponytail getting
Helping
that
an
guy
old
ready
guy.
for court.
Mhm.
And that's where she should have been. That's where she was doing what she was doing before. It's like a high the happiest time of her life, but she probably also feels this guilt connected to the happiest time of her life because that's also when she was Jimmy and did these scams and just this swirl of emotions and regrets and lost dreams and hopes. She's probably on some level she probably feels bad for Jimmy. She's probably crying for him. She misses him. She knows
Mhm.
how crappy his life must be and with the emotions he must be bottling up for how he dealt with her. And I could just go on. We could have this whole episode could have just been about what Kim is crying over. You know what I mean? We probably could have talked a whole hour about
Yeah.
what Kim is crying over. And it was so well performed.
Yes.
Her trying to hold it back and losing it a little, and it all comes out. And I haven't been able to rewatch the episode yet. I usually immediately watch, and I watch the episode, then just immediately watch it again, and then watch it again a couple days later. I haven't been able to bring myself to watch it again yet. I think the episode is so tough
Sad.
in so many
Yeah.
moments in so many ways. Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
like I can't do it to myself. Myself one more day.
There's a neat little thing. So Cheryl was wearing her wedding ring, and I thought that was like interesting. She basically, like maybe in some light that she like thought that Howard was, even though the evidence was against her, she still loved him. It's really interesting because they were getting a divorce before he died.
And they're getting separated at least.
Oh, I thought it was a divorce, but yeah, at least it was not going well their marriage, and even after death, she honors him. I don't know. I thought that was just interesting and sweet or whatever. Like maybe she just couldn't move past it, and then maybe she just couldn't. She felt in her heart that he was innocent, maybe, but she was right. I don't know 100%, but I just thought that was interesting that she was wearing her wedding ring. But back to Jimmy. Jimmy, is breaking into a house. We continue that. And you said that he kind of goes in there and steals watches and all that, as well as like the other stuff that he was supposed to do. And he steps out. He tells Jeff to park in front of the house, because he's just going to walk out, go into Jeff's cab and go. But a cop pulls up right behind Jeff, and at first you're like, the cops are they like trying to not tail, but like pull over Jeff just because he's just out in the middle of a road. But it's funny like seeing the inside of what,
or maybe I wondered if maybe an alarm was tripped when Jimmy broke that window. Or maybe the guy inside called or a neighbor called. There was a lot of reasons that cop might have showed up. A lot of reasons for us and or Jeff to get a little anxious. But then it turned out it was just random.
Yeah. Like the cops, they were eating, and the very first shot I was like, "Can you believe this? This guy?" And then he said, you're thinking that talking about Jeff and the car, like, can you believe he's just standing here? But then he pulls up like this taco, and he's like, there's no fish on this, or they're just talking about food.
Yeah,
and it's a really
he's
clever,
complaining
fun
about
way.
his fast food dinner. He's not complaining about Jeff, the cab driver, or whatever else.
Yeah. And you have Jimmy and outside. He's like, "Oh God, I need to be careful." And you see Jeff pull his car and to drive as slow as possible, and in the view of the cops, you just see Jeff just flying and then like running a stop sign and hitting a car, and you're like, "What just happened?" Like he's over paranoid. I don't know if he did it on purpose, or if that just. I kind of wondered that.
I'm still debating. I still can't decide in my mind if he did it as a distraction to give Jimmy a chance to get out, or if he just freaked out. If he, the roads were icy and he freaked out and crashed in an accident, and it happened to give Jimmy a way out of there. I don't know. I haven't decided yet which one it was.
It was kind of funny. I mean, because like he
moved, a humorous moment.
Yeah, he moves, and you're like, okay, he's moving, and then he runs past a stop sign, and he's swerving. You're like, what is he doing? And then hits the car and you're like, oh my God.
Yeah. I wonder if what he was trying to do was get the cops' attention. He
Yeah,
was
I
trying
was
to
thinking
get
that
them to
too.
follow him, and he was going to peel out and drive off really fast, and then they would follow him. But
Yeah.
he just didn't anticipate the ice on the road and slid out and hit another
Oh man.
car, and so that made it worse.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. One
Uh,
way or the other, what ends up happening is the cops are distracted from the house. Jimmy's able to get out of there.
yeah. Now there's nothing. The preview showed the cops walking up, so you thought that they were gonna possibly bust somebody, but they do bust,
Yeah.
but it's not. It was
Yeah,
misleading almost.
the previews, quote unquote, that they've had have been completely
Yeah,
misleading.
which is
They haven't even
brilliant,
had,
smart.
yeah, and it makes sense. You know, especially like I said, that the writers kind of recognize the fact that there's you know, a thirsty audience out here just waiting to gobble up any little detail they
Uh
can
huh.
get, and so they got to be careful about what they reveal. And they have the teasers at the ends of these episodes have been like they've been like
So vague.
one image and an audio from something different. I think they
Yeah.
even did like different an image from one episode and audio from another episode, and they've showed us an image in black and white that we end up seeing in color. And
Yeah.
you know, it's been you really cannot draw too much from them. You
Yep.
know, it seemed like when we saw that preview that the cops were going to come up to the house where Gene was, but that made me realize, nope, there's no way that's what's happening.
Yep. Yep. Exactly. Um. But Jeff gets arrested, and Gene or Jimmy, he's expecting to, he knows what's going to happen. Jeff's going to call. He's going to get him out. You know, it's almost like they had a contingency. I can't say that word right, but contingent, whatever plan.
Contingency.
Thank you.
Contingency plan. Yeah.
Uh, and so he's waiting for the phone call. Gets the phone call. He's like, "Hey, Dad, you know, I got into this wreck, and they're blaming me for robbing this house." And Gene's like, did you have any proof, or did you have anything in your car that indicated this? He's like, "No, I think they're just, you know, could you just get me out?" He's like, "Of course." But he's like, "I'm gonna have Marianne get you because that just looks better." So he calls Marianne, and Marianne's like, "Why did Jeff call you and not me?" So she's like, and this is where I think is interesting. Marianne, I feel like is like a character that you think is not smart. She may be one of the smartest people.
I think she is smart. Just
Oh no, I was saying when you very first see her, I didn't know, I didn't expect her to be that smart, but she's extremely smart. And so you know when she's like piecing things together, and he's like, "I'll pick you up in the morning." When Gene goes to pick her up in the morning, she doesn't answer. He goes to the back door and opens the door and realizes she's on the internet, and she's watching a video of Saul, but you know, of one of his old commercials. And I mean, she pieced it together that he's a con artist. And it's just funny.
She had a few clues along the way.
She did.
Like
She did.
I don't know how really suspicious she was this by itself, but in context of other things, a couple episodes ago, remember she asked, "How's Nippy?" And he's like, "What? Oh yeah, Nippy."
Yep.
And in fact, that was one of the misleading teasers that they gave us at the end of one of the episodes.
Huh?
It was an image of Kim and Jimmy's apartment in black and white.
Yep.
And then we heard Jimmy say, "After all that, a happy ending." So that, but here we figure out where that line of audio came from. He's like, "Oh yeah, Nippy was just in some house down the street. After all that, a happy ending." You know, and she's like, "Oh okay," but I don't know if she asked that in the first place because she thought it was weird that he didn't bring it up. You know what I mean? Or maybe she just wanted to know about Nippy. But somewhere in the back of her brain, that little bit of data is floating, right?
Yeah.
That after this whole thing trying to find Nippy, that he doesn't bring it up again. And when she brings it up, it takes him a second to even remember.
Mm-hmm.
So then after that, she hears him in the middle of the night.
Yeah.
When Buddy doesn't want to go back and go to the cancer guy's house, they're kind of arguing, and the dog barks, and she's like, "What in the world are these boys doing out there at, I don't know, midnight or 2 in the morning or something?"
Mm-hmm.
You know, I'm assuming she didn't hear every word of the conversation, but it still was like heated
Suspicious.
and late at night. What are they? Yeah, it's suspicious.
Yeah. Also,
So then,
like when she, I guess the the internet, and like Saul's like hanging out with her. When Jeff comes, he like blows her off almost, and you have that
Yeah,
like awkward scene of like her like just like, oh, I guess I'll watch stuff by myself. It's like
yeah.
that
She's like,
almost.
"Hey, have drinks. Come
Yeah,
here, son. He bought me this computer." And Jimmy's like, "How about me and Jeff go have drinks in the garage? We'll see you
exactly.
later." She's like, "Oh, okay." And so clearly he has more interest in Jeff than her. Like at
Hmm.
first she feels like he's being friends to her, but nah, maybe she's really here for Jeff. And there was also, I feel like there was at least one other little clue. I mean, there was definitely one on the phone that
Yeah.
when it came to the bail. Oh, because he had told her he never been to Albuquerque. When she mentioned something about
Uh,
Jeff having gotten mixed up in a bad crowd, he's like, "Oh, I've never been there." So then on the phone, she's like, well, in Albuquerque to get the bail, there was this hassle and blah blah blah." And he's
I
like,
didn't
"Oh
catch
well,
that.
in Omaha, you just do this. It's nothing like it is in Albuquerque." And she's, "Wait, how do you know what it's like in Albuquerque? Why do you know so much about bail?"
I
I
thought I
think
got that vibe. Yeah, I didn't catch
yeah.
the Albuquerque. That's actually
Yeah,
um
I think that I, any one of those maybe isn't enough, but you put them all together. If it
stuff.
wasn't for the him not remembering Nippy, it was if it wasn't for them meeting in the middle of the night, she might not have thought anything about the bail being different in Albuquerque and Saul knowing about that, right?
Yeah.
Or even with the thing in Nippy and him meeting in the middle of the night, if he hadn't been so knowledgeable about how bail works in Albuquerque, she still might. But all those things together was enough. Even then, it wasn't enough for her to think he's a con man. It was enough to make her check if he was a con man,
Yep.
right?
Yep. And she was right. And it's funny because the show's there's a big part of the show that Jimmy was helping elderly people. It's this ironic that an elderly person took him down, you could argue, or at least
Yeah,
caught,
yeah,
something like, I don't know if she actually is going to be responsible for him going to jail, but I'm pretty sure it's going to be like a domino effect,
yeah. It's a part of it, like so many things in the show and in the world. The showrunners, a lot of times when you hear them or read interviews or hear interviews with them, they a lot of times talk about the idea that nothing is ever just one person or one thing's fault. There's often like a series of events that lead to
Yep.
some conclusion, and it sometimes the conclusion might have been inevitable, and maybe because of one of the actions along the way. But sometimes any one of those actions could have been removed, and you don't get to the same conclusion, or you get to it anyway. And it's really hard to assign blame. Like, for example, if I'm driving down the road and a drunk driver, runs a stop sign and hits me,
Hmm.
well, that's my fault. If I hadn't been driving down the road, they wouldn't have hit me. Well, I don't think that's quite true, right? It's
Yeah.
their fault. It's their fault they hit me. It's true that if I hadn't been driving down the road, they wouldn't have hit me. But that doesn't mean it's my fault that they hit me,
Exactly.
right? And so I think that you could argue that that Marion is going to be Gene's downfall, but you could also argue that the cancer patient is Gene's downfall, or that Buddy was Gene's. If Buddy had just gone there, Jeff, or you could argue, I think most correctly, that Gene is Gene's downfall. Gene did all these
Absolutely.
things to himself,
Yeah.
man.
Like Walter was Walter's downfall. It wasn't,
Yeah.
oh, it's because he was mixing with Gus. No.
If
Walter.
Marion didn't happen to piece this together just now,
Yeah.
oh, well, then Gene just would have lived happily ever after, and he never would have got for doing any crimes. He would have
Nah.
just kept every week. He would have run a new scam, and no one ever would have caught him. No, that's not what's gonna happen.
Yeah. It's like
He's gonna get
inevitable.
caught. Marion happened to be the one. Someone would
Yeah.
have done it eventually. Probably would have been Marion eventually if he kept doing things with Buddy
Hmm.
and Jeff. It might have been Buddy. Buddy might have got fed up
Yeah.
and in fact, we got to wrap this up pretty quick. But
Yeah.
another
Yeah.
little thought I had, just especially because we talked about how every little thing in here seems to be for a reason. I feel like they focused in on that dog a few times,
I
right?
was wondering, like, why was there a dog in general? I thought it was an interesting choice, and yeah.
There's the basic reason, the surface reason, it makes a lot of sense. It keeps Buddy from seeming suspicious. Why is some dude walking around in the middle of the night in our neighborhood?
Good
That's
point.
suspicious. Why is someone walking their dog in the Oh, because the dog has to pee. Okay, that makes sense. That's not suspicious at all. It's probably better to have the dog. It might be a little risky to bring the dog in. What if it barks? But the person's like knocked out. They drugged him. They put barbiturates in their drink, and so like even if the dog barked, they probably wouldn't wake up. Um, maybe on some level the dog is a lookout. I
I
don't know
thought
what
about
they're
that.
looking
Yeah.
out for though. Like that doesn't even quite make sense to me. But what I started to piece together
Mm,
is that the dog is a parallel. Excuse me,
mm,
is a parallel to Jeff, not Jeff, to Buddy. That Jeff's friend that's part of the scam.
yeah.
His name is even Buddy. That's like a dog's name. Buddy and the dog are both being loyal. They're doing what they're told. They're keeping quiet.
uh,
They're not causing trouble. I think they're a parallel to each other, a symbol of each other.
Interesting.
But eventually, if you push a dog too far,
I'm gonna
it's
bite
gonna
back.
bark or maybe bite. And Jimmy pushed Buddy too far. Buddy's
Mhm.
like, I'm not doing this. What? No, what do you mean? The guy's got cancer. I don't feel comfortable. What? Cancer guys seems to be jerks. I don't care. Look, my dad has cancer. I'm not comfortable with this. Well,
Yeah.
fine. You're fired. And in that moment,
Mm,
if you remember, the dog was barking, and they put him in the car, and that's what woke up or got Marion's attention. And
yeah.
I think that's the reason they gave a little focus on the dog. They're trying to draw in a parallel between the dog and Buddy.
It's interesting.
In addition to the dog being good cover for walking down the street in the
Yeah,
middle of the
yeah,
night.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But yeah, I
Like
mean,
some of those moments they cut to showing the dog when he's taking the pictures and they show the dog by the door. They could have just edited that out.
yep.
They wouldn't put that in there for no reason.
Yes,
They wouldn't have even
absolutely.
made the shot. And if they made the shot and didn't edit it out, okay, it has a reason. I think that's the reason.
Yeah, I like that. Obviously, uh, she Marianne, confronts Gene or Jimmy, and he has to make almost like a choice. But he decides to run because like she like calls. She's like, "I have a burglar in my house," and he allows it. Like because he took it away from her. She has like this little
Yanked the phone cord out of the wall.
That
Even,
was
right?
yeah
When
that
she
was
first threatened to call
yeah.
911.
He like
It was
started tying
whoa.
up the phone cord like he was gonna choke
Yeah,
her.
like
I knew he wasn't, but like
yeah.
it was like also just weird. I think he even realized it's like oh I should not
What
do
am
that.
I doing? Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But like she has like this little collar thing. Like she's elderly, so if she gets into trouble, she calls I guess a nurse. And he yanks
It
that
calls
from her.
911, I think. It's life alert, I think is what that thing
That's it. Yeah,
is.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And it just, you press one button and it calls 911.
Yeah.
So
And
they can say, I've fallen, I can't get up, or, I need help, or, there's a burglar in my house, or whatever it is. Yeah.
yeah, but like he does take that away from her, and then he gives it back to her. Like he it's almost like you said, he realized he was going too far, and he's like, I need to go. Well, obviously, he runs. Like she calls 911, and he bolts, and it ends. So I guess this is like more of a prediction. Like, so you think that he's going to turn himself in? I don't know.
I have been saying for a long time that I think he's going to jail.
Yes.
And I think he's going to jail by turning himself in. I'm more confident about going to jail, but there's a lot of ways he could end up in jail. But that's my base guess is going to jail. And then details are I think he's going to turn himself in. And I think that's more set up now than it was before.
Yeah.
Given that I think he had an epiphany in that moment. It's like, well, I'm about to choke this old woman. Like, what am I doing? How did I get here?
Mhm.
And we saw Kim turn herself in, tell him that he should turn himself in. He told Walt he should turn himself in the last time the two that Saul and Walt interacted with each other. I I'm a little less certain of it than I was before, but I but I still think it's more likely than any other thing. Any
Yeah,
other
because I
single
feel
thing.
like it,
I think it's very possible at this point that something crazy happens, like he's speeding down the road in his car and slids out on some ice. Like
I
kind of
was
like what we
debating if he
saw.
was going to get into a
I
car
think
wreck, which
it's
would
yeah.
kill him, or
Yeah,
something like
I
that.
don't think that they would kill him in a car wreck. I think that would be too anticlimactic, for lack of a better word. Um, but I don't expect that to happen. But I do think it's more likely now, given what we've seen so far. I feel it's more likely that he gets caught than he turns himself in.
Yeah, because there's only
Um,
like
but I
there's
think
like
he's
one
kind of getting
episode.
caught because I think he's doing everything short of turning himself in. Like he's
Yeah.
begging to get caught with
Oh,
what he's doing.
absolutely.
And he's just like looking, asking for it, if you will.
Yeah.
Uh, like he could have like yanked that thing off Marion's neck and left. And so
Yep.
now he doesn't have to like choke her to death, but she also doesn't have a way to call the police either. Does that
Yeah.
make sense? So like that would have been a smarter way if he was trying to escape, if he didn't want to get caught, right?
Yeah.
But he let her make the call. I think some level, subconsciously, he wants to get caught. He might want to go down swinging, right? Maybe he's not going to get on his knees and say, "Sorry, sir, please handcuff me." Maybe he won't be that subservient to the
Yeah.
authorities. But I think if he really wanted to get away, he could have got away. But I'm not so sure he does really want to get away.
Yeah. Yeah, I got that vibe too. Any other predictions? It's like one episode, so it's like trying to think of like what they're gonna cram in this next episode. I'm obviously they have to resolve Jimmy, but like
it's a little bit of meta knowledge. Spoiler alert if you're worried about, external information from outside the actual TV show. But we know Walt has filmed a scene. We know Bryan Cranston has filmed a scene.
Another scene you're talking about.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I
did think that they're going to wrap up everyone. Like, I wonder if they're going to bring back like Mike for one more scene, Gus for one more scene. I have no clue how they would do it, but like I was trying to think if they're going to. I don't want to say cram, but like
we will not see Mike or Gus.
I was thinking that
or any other old character, except for
maybe Kim.
I think we might see Kim again, and we'll certainly see Walt. I guess we might see Mike with Walt. I guess since we know we're gonna see Walt, I guess it leaves open the potential to see
Mike lives after all. He was faking his death. I know that's not true, but no, I don't think so either. But it would be funny. I would have put it past him, let's say. But it'd be so silly. Like what would that resolve? But yeah. I guess we'll see. Definitely going to be sad.
It's interesting to think about how the scene with Walt can be relevant. What it is that we will.
It could be a parallel.
Be shown.
Like
it could be similar to what they did with this past one, but I'm trying to think what would the parallel be.
Well, Walt went down a bad path, and look where it got him. Saul's going down a bad path. Look where it got him, type of thing.
We don't need to see another scene of Walt to know he went down a bad path.
I guess we
already know what happened with Walt.
Yeah. I don't know.
If we think about it, we could probably I might need a couple more days, but we might be able to come up with something. But I think it's awkward for us to sit here silently thinking for 3 or 4 minutes. So even if I could come up with it in just 3 or 4 minutes, that would be awkward for our viewers. So
yeah. No, we'll end it. I mean, it's long enough. We're about to hit 3 minutes. I wish 3 hours. So
I will say I wanted to give it a moment of thought without bringing this up, but in the teaser preview trailer or whatever.
They show a car wreck. Well, I don't say a car wreck. They show rusted old car in the sand.
I'm 90% sure that Saul's old yellow and red Esteem that's wrecked in the desert.
Interesting.
Almost confident that's what that car is.
Yeah.
And I don't know if we're actually going to see that scene next episode for some reason. I can easily imagine him showing us that scene without it actually being in the episode. Or if it is in the episode, it might be some sort of a flashback. We might get some sort of flashback to,
oh, I forgot to bring up something. This is kind of important. So when he sees his commercial, so when he goes to Marianne and he flips the laptop around and looks at what's on the commercial, the only time you see color.
No, it's the second time.
Oh, is there another time?
Happened in the very first episode. The first episode, season 1, episode 1, starts with Gene.
Yeah.
In black and white. And we see him kind of go through his day at Cinnabon. He goes home, makes a drink, slumps down in his chair, turns on the TV, and then he goes in his little box and digs out a VCR tape and puts it in, and you hear the music, and you hear the, you having legal troubles, eh? And you hear the salesman Saul, and then as he's watching it, little yellow lights, yellow and red, starts to flicker in his glasses.
I was say that this one. I was curious if there's some symbolism in the color that they use, because there's blue and there's orange, if I'm correct, and maybe it's red, but I'm pretty sure it was orange.
I think yellow was a primary color that you see.
Okay,
but you might see little flickers of orange and red and blue, but I think if you had to pick one color that you saw and it reflected in his glasses,
it was orange.
Yellow would be the color you would pick.
I was pretty sure it was orange. I remember it vividly. I was like, what was the other color? And I looked, I was like, oh, it was blue. I was trying to figure out, it was so obvious.
I will admit, or I have already admitted, I haven't rewatched this episode yet.
Yeah.
But I'm fairly confident if you go back and watch it again,
Huh.
for one, it's probably lasts for a couple seconds.
Yeah, it does.
And depending on the moment you try to pause it at, you might see a different color. There might be a moment where it's just straight up blue. But I think the predominant color, the color you see the most of for the most time, is yellow.
What does orange represent?
Orange is the color that I'm maybe least sure about of all the colors. It usually seems associated with crime, but red is definitely the color they use for crime. They said it.
Yeah.
So I don't know if maybe they use orange interchangeably with red, or if there's some, maybe it's in the same realm. Like maybe orange is like light crimes or people who were caught, right? So usually
Yeah.
you're caught when you do a crime, but maybe someone who is caught but isn't guilty gets orange instead of red. I don't know if that's quite true. Because like for example, when Jimmy broke into Chuck's house to steal that tape, he got arrested, and when he got arraigned in court, he had an orange jumpsuit on. But
Wait, what is the opposite of protect or facade? What's the opposite term for that? I'm just curious. Because opposite of green, not opposite of green, but like parallel to green is orange. I'm curious if there's the flip side of that is represents orange.
Oh, the opposite of green is red.
No, I know that, but I meant like if you split the color wheel down and yellow's on the bottom, green's on the left, red's on the right. I'm sorry, green. Blue's on the left and red's on the right. Right below that is green and orange. And I was curious if there's like what's an opposite of facade or a facade, or like
I would say the opposite of a facade would be open, bare, revealed, unprotected.
I wonder if that's orange. That's what I was kind of getting at. For example, if he just saw himself, he's unprotected, he got revealed. Just throwing it out there. I have no clue if that's true, but
a little bit, yeah. I don't know if it fits with all the other instances.
That's why,
show. I'll have to think about it, but like for example, one moment that stood out to me was Kim's mom's purse was orange. And when Kim got caught for shoplifting as a little girl, and that flashback, and her mom comes and gets it, she had orange on her purse. And I don't know if I don't think her mom was revealed, that maybe she's being revealed to us. Maybe she's being revealed to Kim that she's, I don't know.
Yeah, because what was inside was, I don't know. Anyways, I guess we could end it there.
Yeah.
Anyways.
Well, hold on. I feel like, I wanted to say the other thing we see with that image for preview, teaser, or whatever, was Saul's old Esteem wrecked in the desert.
Yeah.
What we hear is him saying, Hoover Pressure Max Model 16, something like that.
Yeah, he was talking about the model of the car, it sounded like, or something.
The vacuum. No, the vacuum cleaner. He's talking about the vacuum cleaner. But we know Bob Odenkirk said in an interview that the vacuum cleaner is too easy. That's too easy for the writers to use a vacuum cleaner. And even before Bob said that, I had that opinion that I don't think they should go to that well again. Now, maybe he will try to not succeed. I could see that happening.
Yeah.
I could also see maybe it's a flashback to him trying to memorize what to say to tell Walt. Maybe that'll be the Walt flashback scene. Will be Saul telling him to make this phone call. I don't know. We'll see. Those are my best guesses. But even if I'm exactly right about those, I still don't feel like I figured out what's happening next episode.
No.
I might have figured out one scene,
Yeah.
I don't know how that scene will tie in or where Jim is going to end up. I'm standing by my guess that he ends up in jail, and I think it's most likely he turns himself in. But the details of how that happened, I don't know how to predict. Here's another thought I wanted to get out, by the way. A lot of people talk about there being twists in the show.
Yeah.
Twists that happen. And I'm hesitant to use that word because kind of like I was talking about earlier, I think if you, at any moment in the show, you pause it and think about all the information you have and then think about what's going to happen, I think you could probably figure it out. Like sometimes it might be tricky to figure out. But certainly whenever things do happen, if you look back, you can always be like, they set that up. It makes sense. You can always see. And I feel like usually if you can look back and see how they set it up, it's not a twist. Now, I don't know if that's really quite true or fair. I don't know if that's quite the best way to define a twist. I was talking to my wife, and she pointed, I was presenting this idea to her. She's like, well, you would agree that Fight Club ended with a twist, right? And like, yeah, that's true. But if you once you know it and you go back and watch Fight Club, you can see it was all set up. Like, yeah,
Yeah.
I guess that's true. So maybe there are twists, but I still think that the the the, the twists that they do are often the most logical, normal, regular thing, right? Like
Yeah.
if we went back to the beginning of this season and all the different theories about what people thought were happening with Kim, right?
Yeah.
Like she's really working for Gus, or she's gonna be killed, or she's going to jail. If someone had said she's just gonna break up with Jimmy and work at a sprinkler factory, like that would not have seemed like a good guess, right?
That's true.
But it's probably way more likely than she got killed or worked for Gus. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? It's a kind of a normal, regular thing to happen. It kind of makes sense. Like when that happened, we weren't like, "What a twist! I can't believe
Yeah.
they tricked us." Like actually, it makes a lot of sense, you
I,
know. And
I can
so
see like,
that's kind of what I expect for the next episode. Whatever it is, it's probably just gonna make a lot of sense. And I think it makes a lot of sense for Jimmy to go to jail. The details of how he goes to jail, like it doesn't seem like this exciting story for Kim to like break up with Jimmy and work at a waterworks factory. But when we watch that plot play out,
hmm,
it's
makes sense.
riveting. We're about to cry over it, right?
Yeah.
Like they can make something that might seem normal be very powerful and very meaningful and very emotional. So that's
Yeah.
kind of what I expect.
Oh yeah, I want to point out. So when I first watched episode 10, Nippy,
Hmm.
people were mad and disappointed. They're like, God, that episode was so boring. It was like the worst episode ever. And I think you kind of brought this up, but I don't think people understood the storytelling because you came from like this like puzzle, like episode 1 through 9 was like so set up and so you could argue action packed. It wasn't, but like there was a lot going on, and then it just slowed things down on episode 10. You could argue, and I remember seeing that. And I was like, I don't know if that's necessarily true or fair. It's just a different way of storytelling. Gene's story, for
Yeah.
one, Gene's story is supposed to be slower. He's boring right now. What do you expect?
I
I
I don't even really think it was that much slower.
don't think so either, by the way. But yeah,
I think that they did everything in that episode that they've been doing for the whole show.
exactly.
Like he sets up this scam, they practice it, he runs it, they get away with it. Something goes wrong, they get it. Like I think the main difference is it was just one storyline. Usually we're
Yep.
bouncing around between Mike and Saul and Kim and Gus and Nacho. We're getting two or three storylines sort of intertwined, whereas this one we only really got one.
Mhm.
But what part of what that means is we actually got more of one story.
Yep.
Usually, a scheme that Jimmy is putting together stretches out over at least 2 or 3 episodes. But
Hmm.
this one happened all in one episode. But he's been running schemes the whole time. It's the same from the skaters in episode 1 to the switching out the numbers for Chuck to the to making Howard look like he was on cocaine. These types of schemes that Jimmy puts together is what's been going on the whole. It's people who didn't like this episode. I don't know why they like the show. People didn't like Nippy. Like Nippy is an encapsulation of what this whole show has been the whole time.
Yep.
They did everything. It had these moments of suspense, these moments of humor. It literally did everything that the whole show has been doing the same way the whole way, except that it was in black and white and that it only focused on one character instead of 3 or 4.
Yep.
But it
And I
wasn't
guess you could
any
argue.
slower. It didn't have any different type of plot. It had the same amount of humor and suspense and drama and scams and internal conflict and symbolism and
Mhm.
short story use of conveying emotion, montage. It was all the same stuff the show's been doing the whole way.
Yep.
Anyone who didn't like that episode, I think I feel bad for them. That's the best way I can say it. I think that they just aren't getting the full value of this show. I think it's almost like they're watching this show with the sound off or something like that. They're just not. I think this show with the sound off is still one of the best shows of all time. If you had to watch Better Call Saul with no volume, or if you had no color the whole way, if even as important as I think color is, if you had to watch it on a black and white TV, I still think it's one of the best shows of all time. And so I guess I can understand people who aren't fully getting it still watching it all this way, but I feel bad for how much they're missing.
Yeah.
Because I think the show is beautiful on a million levels, and Nippy is a demonstration of that. And
Mhm.
people who didn't like that show are either not getting something, or they haven't fully analyzed it, or whatever it is. I don't know what it is, but I feel sorry for them.
No, I agree. All right. Anything else before I guess we wrap up?
I mean, I'm sure I could come up with more stuff to talk about, but
Yeah.
we'll say that's enough for now.
All right. So next week we'll be finalizing Better Call Saul episode 13, the finale of the series Forever and We'll Cry. But until then, thanks for watching. Follow Dancing Sean on YouTube or his Twitter or any platform he decides to put it on. And that's it. You have a good night. Bye bye.